Chapter 1261. Old man Zhou had been waiting in the warm room for a full 4 hours. His buttocks were aching from sitting, and his heart was getting restless. However, old man Zhou's heart still sank when he saw Her Majesty the Empress enter. She hurriedly got up and respectfully knelt down with her cane. "Good luck to Her Majesty the Empress." "Zhao Mama!" Han Yunqi shouted loudly, "Zhao Mama, hurry and help old man Zhou up." There were many palace maids in the room, but Zhao Mama was nowhere to be seen. The room was silent and no one responded. The warm room was only so big and could be seen with a single glance. How could Han Yunqi not see that Zhao Mama wasn't here? She was doing it on purpose. She raised a hand and placed it on a palace maid's hand. She slowly walked in and walked past the kneeling old man Zhou. The Empress's posture was very imposing. Actually, she didn't like to put on the airs of an empress. However, for some people, if she didn't put on airs, they would think that she wasn't suited to be empress. It wasn't until she sat down in the main seat that Han Yunqi asked with a surprised expression, "Where's Zhao Mama?" Replying to Her Majesty the Empress, Zhao Mama went to find tea. The palace maid replied. Han Yunqi flew into a rage. "What? She still hasn't found it." The palace maid lowered her head, not daring to answer. That old wicked servant. She usually slacks off and does evil. This consort didn't bother to bicker with her because of her old age, but she's becoming more and more excessive. If this consort doesn't teach her a lesson today, how can this consort continue to be the head of the 6 palaces? In the future, when the Empress takes on concubines, how can this consort control her? Han Yunqi said angrily. These words were clearly meant for old man Zhou to hear. They were scolding her indirectly, warning her, and mocking her. Zhao Mama and Mu Ling'er were hiding at the door. Zhao Mama understood as soon as she heard this and almost laughed out loud. Mu Ling'er, on the other hand, was completely baffled. She had just come over to talk to her sister about some matters regarding Medicine City, but Zhao Mama had stopped her. Mu Ling'er could tell that her sister was implying something, but she didn't understand what was going on. She whispered, "What's going on? Why are you smiling so happily?" Zhao Mama chuckled mischievously. With one hand on her waist and the other pointing at old man Zhou, she imitated the Empress's tone and said, "Old lady Zhou, you old shrew. Don't think that Ben Gong doesn't know about the vicious things you've done. Seeing that you're already so old, Ben Gong won't argue with you. You're actually getting more and more outrageous, daring to scheme against me and send 2 empty red packets from the Bailey clan to Musi of Northernly. If this consort doesn't teach you a lesson today, how will this consort establish her authority in the harem? In the future, if you old shrews force the Empress to take concubines, wouldn't this consort be unable to do anything about it?" After Zhao Mama finished speaking, she couldn't stop herself from snickering. Mu Ling'er was shocked, "Sent to Musi of Northernly. Isn't that so?" Fortunately, Jin Zi happened to see it. "Otherwise, this matter would be a big problem," Zhao Mama said. Mu Ling'er was very surprised that old man Zhou would do such a thing. However, she was even more curious, did Jin Zi personally go to Musi? Jin Zi was so busy, how could he personally go to Musi? Moreover, Musi was in charge of the disaster relief funds, while Jin Zi was in charge of Northernly. Jin Zi should avoid arousing suspicion. Otherwise, if there were any problems with the funds in the future, Jin Zi would be the prime suspect. "I heard that he went to make a donation, and he donated quite a lot," Zhao Mama said. "Donation?" Mu Ling'er's first reaction was, did Jin Zi have money? Didn't Jin Zi owe a lot of debt? However, she quickly remembered that she had returned Jin Zi's money. Could it be that he used that money to return it? He donated it all. Mu Ling'er muttered to herself. She was wondering if she should check how much Jin Zi had donated. She had returned a gold card. In fact, as long as she wanted to, she could check every single one of Jean Z's expenses. Mu Linger hesitated. That's not good. That's his private matter, Mu Linger was pondering when inside the room, old lady Zhou, who was kneeling on the ground, suddenly fell to the ground. Mu Linger was shocked and almost rushed in, but Zhao Mama stopped her. She's faking it. Don't worry. Inside the room, Han Yunxi had already stood up. A cold light flashed past her eyes as she shouted, "Someone, summon the imperial physician." Han Yunxi had just taken a stance and was about to let the palace maids beside her help old man Zhou up. Who knew that this old man would actually pretend to faint? She had originally planned to end this quickly, but she didn't expect this old man Zhou to be so aggressive. Very good. She would satisfy her. The palace maids brought old man Zhou to a warm couch. The imperial physician quickly rushed over and examined him. He didn't find anything wrong, but old man Zhou still didn't wake up. Your Highness the Empress, this is old man Zhou. Perhaps she's too old and fainted from overworking. Let her rest for now. The imperial physician said seriously. If it's not a serious illness, this consort can treat it. You may leave. Han Yunxi said coldly. Even the imperial physician could tell that there was something wrong with her tone, let alone old lady Zhou, who was pretending to faint. At this moment, old lady Zhou's heart began to panic. However, after the imperial physician left, Han Yunxi said to the surrounding palace maids, "You may all leave. This consort will personally watch over her." Yes. Old lady Zhou's heart trembled when she heard the palace maid's footsteps in the distance. When she heard the door close, her breathing quickened. Heavens! She had already fainted. What else did the Empress want to do? She was the mother of a first-rank official and a first-rank titled madam. She had an extremely high reputation in Jiangnan. There was no proof of the red packet incident. Even if the Empress suspected her, she couldn't make things difficult for her. Did this Empress have any regard for the law? Old man Zhou's nerves were stretched taut as she listened to the movements around her. It was a pity that Han Yunxi didn't say a word her entire life. The quieter the surroundings were, the more flustered old lady Zhou became. She didn't know what the Empress wanted to do. Han Yunxi silently took out a golden needle and suddenly pierced it into old man Zhou's acupuncture point on his face. This time, old man Zhou's entire body tensed up. Han Yunxi thought that she would wake up, but who knew that old man Zhou was actually still holding on. Han Yunxi suddenly inserted another needle. This time, the needle pierced old man Zhou's hand. It was extremely painful. Old lady Zhou was clearly trembling, but she still insisted on closing her eyes and not waking up. She knew that if she woke up, with the Empress's attitude, it wouldn't be easy for her to leave the palace. If she didn't wake up, the Empress might get tired of tormenting her and order someone to send her out. However, old man Zhou waited for a long time, but the third needle didn't come. Her entire body started to itch, and it was getting more and more itchy. It was painful, but she could still endure it. But it was itchy. Even if old man Zhou wanted to endure it, she couldn't help it in the end. Soon, she reached out and scratched her neck. Han Yunxi simply sat on one side and watched without a word. At first, old man Zhou only used one hand, but after a while, she used both hands. As she scratched, she couldn't help but turn over and start scratching her back. Who knew that it would be better if she didn't scratch? Once she scratched, it became even more itchy. The more itchy she scratched, the harder she scratched. It was as if she was addicted and couldn't stop. Unconsciously, as she scratched, she sat up because her feet were also very itchy. At this moment, Han Yunxi finally spoke. "Old man Zhou, you're awake." Old man Zhou was stunned. She turned around and realized that she had sat up. She was stunned and didn't know how to answer Han Yunxi. She didn't know what had happened to her just now. Why did she sit up for no reason? Han Yunxi definitely wouldn't tell old lady Zhou that she had just poisoned her. It was a kind of drug that made people addicted to scratching itches. When they itched, they would ignore everything and only care about scratching. Han Yunxi handed over the antidote. Here, take it and it won't itch anymore. As soon as she said this, old man Zhou understood what was going on. She looked at Han Yunxi in disbelief. She was shocked and angry, but she didn't dare to say anything. Han Yunxi really didn't know what the old lady was so angry about. Was she the only one allowed to knock herself out and let others poison her? Han Yunxi stuffed the antidote into old lady Zhou's mouth and said mildly, "If there's nothing else, then come down. We agreed that I'd treat you to tea. Zhao Mama should have brought the tea by now." As soon as she said this, Granny Zhao, who had been waiting outside, immediately pushed the door open and entered. "Esteemed Empress. Esteemed Empress, this old servant knows her wrongs." This old servant searched the entire imperial harem but couldn't find old-time tea, Zhao Mama said loudly. "Isn't there a pile of old-time tea in His Majesty's imperial study?" Han Yunxi retorted. Hearing this, old man Zhou got off the bed in fright. "Esteemed Empress, this subject's wife is fine with drinking water. Drinking water is fine." Everyone in Cloud Realm continent knew that the emperor was addicted to tea. His old-time tea was a collector's item. Even if esteemed Empress really brought it here, she wouldn't dare to drink it. Old Madame Zhou had always been a patient person, but after Han Yunxi's torment, she wanted her mistress to hurry up and tell her about the empty red packets. Then she'd just deny it no matter what. Why would Han Yunxi mention the red packets? They'd already been donated under Bailey Lixiang's name. This was official business, not the imperial harem's business. Han Yunxi had found old man Zhou to talk about the imperial harem. "Old man Zhou, sit down. You just woke up, so don't get too worked up. If you faint again, I don't know how to wake you up," Han Yunxi said seriously. Old man Zhou quickly sat down on one side. "Zhao Mama, it's getting late, isn't it?" Han Yunxi asked. "It's already dark, so it's late," Zhao Mama replied honestly. "You won't drink the tea, but you should at least eat before you leave, right?" Han Yunxi smiled. "Go, have Xia He bring the noodles I made over for old man Zhou to try." Xia He. When old Madame Zhou heard this name, her originally unpleasant complexion suddenly paled. Xia He. Wasn't that the palace maid she'd spent so much effort to hide in the palace? Esteemed Empress actually had Xia He bring her noodles. Could it be? Old man Zhou didn't dare to think further. She taught Xia He all by herself, and she'd only been in the palace for a few months. She didn't believe that Xia He had been exposed. She clenched her fists to calm herself down. As they waited, the room fell silent again. Han Yunxi glanced at the nervous old Madame Zhou and smiled. "Zhao Mama, Xia He was the one who packed the red packets for the new year, right?" "That's right," Zhao Mama replied. At this moment, old man Zhou's heart almost stopped beating. She finally knew why esteemed Empress had summoned her to the palace. Chapter 1262. The entire warm room was so quiet that it was scary. Old man Zhou's heart was beating wildly. At this moment, the wait was so long. Old man Zhou was nervous about Xia He, but he didn't know that the bowl of noodles she was about to face was actually much more terrifying than the palace maid Xia He, a lot more. Zhao Mama didn't see how the Empress cooked the bowl of noodles, but when Xia He brought the broth over, Zhao Mama couldn't help but hold her forehead. She secretly glanced at the Empress and silently thought that it would take forever for the Emperor to eat the noodles personally cooked by the Empress. The Empress had been learning for several days, but she still hadn't learned how to roll the noodles. This time, she didn't boil the noodles into dough balls, but directly rolled the noodles into dough balls. In short, there was still a bowl of dough balls in the bowl. To describe it in more vivid terms, it was a bowl of clear soup with a few lumps of dough and a piece of boiled green vegetable. He was very nervous, and Old Man Zhou was also very nervous. The two people's attention wasn't on the broth. He was so nervous that she didn't dare to look at Old Man Zhou. Old Man Zhou gripped the armrest with one hand, almost crushing it. When he brought the broth in front of Old Man Zhou was so nervous that he didn't notice the strangeness of the bowl of noodles. Zhou, Old Man Zhou, please eat. Xiaohe's teeth were chattering. Her appearance made Old Man Zhou unable to deceive himself anymore. Old Man Zhou was sure that the Empress must have found out that Xiaohe was one of her people and had evidence. Otherwise, the Empress wouldn't have let Xiaohe out so easily. How much evidence did the Empress have? Did she still have room to explain, room to escape punishment? Old Man Zhou held his last breath and didn't take the initiative to reveal anything. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy could you win 100 battles. She still couldn't figure out the Empress's background, so she could only advance step by step. She stood up and knelt down to thank the Empress. This subject's wife thanks the Empress for her reward. I already said that you don't have to be so courteous. Granny Zhao, quickly help Old Man Zhou up. Han Yunqi's attitude was polite, and her smile was harmless, as if the person who had just poisoned him was not her. After Granny Zhao helped him up, she pulled Old Man Zhou to sit down and personally handed him a pair of chopsticks. Old Man Zhou, this was made by the Empress herself. You must eat well. At this time, Old Man Zhou looked at the bowl of noodles seriously. She was stunned. What? What is this? It looked like a lump of dough, but it didn't. In a large bowl of clear soup, there were only 4 or 5 fist-sized lumps of dough. Old Man Zhou, who had always thought that Han Yunqi would not poison her, suddenly suspected that this bowl of noodles was poison. However, she had no choice but to eat. If she ate it and something happened, Han Yunqi would have to give an explanation to her son, Jiangnan's Murong family, and the Zhou family. If she didn't eat it, then she would be looking down on the Empress's authority and trampling on the Empress's reward. The crime could be small or big. In palace fights, ruthless moves were never used. They were afraid that their status was inferior and they would be suppressed by etiquette. Han Yunqi's status as the Empress meant that she was destined to fight openly. If Old Man Zhou knew that the Empress had Xiaohe as a spy, she would never enter the palace. Old Man Zhou didn't dare to stay for too long. He could only pick up the fist-sized lumps of dough, and eat. The size of a normal dough ball was very uniform. At most, it was the size of a thumb. It was especially chewy. Moreover, the soup of a dough ball was definitely not a clear soup, but a thick soup. It required all kinds of ingredients to boil it to create a delicious taste. The lumps of dough were chewy, but the soup was fragrant and thick. It could be said that it was a very delicious home-cooked dish. However, Old Man Zhou took the first bite and found that the Empress's fist-sized lumps of dough were especially sticky to the teeth. It was even stickier than mochi. It didn't have any strength at all. It also didn't have the faint wheat fragrance of high-quality flour. For the elderly, they were most afraid of eating sour, hard, and sticky food. It was just one bite, but it made Old Man Zhou eat very strenuously. It also made her start to consider the taste of this bowl of noodles and ignore the question of whether it was poisonous or not. How is it? Han Yunqi asked excitedly. Of course, she knew that the lumps of dough weren't made like this. She had just rolled the flour into shape and her hands were too sore. Moreover, there wasn't enough time, so she simply chopped a few pieces and threw them into the pot to cook. Old Man Zhou looked up and didn't answer for a long time. It wasn't that she didn't want to answer, but that the dough was too sticky. Her mouth was full. She used a lot of effort to handle it and answered, "The taste is very good. This subject's wife is really lucky today. If you like it, then eat more," Han Yunxi said with a laugh. Old Man Zhou didn't just want to eat more. How could she not finish what the Empress gave her? Thus, under everyone's gaze, Old Man Zhou silently gnawed on the lumps of dough. It was fine if it was sticky, but in the end, she found that the lumps of dough were hard and not cooked through. Looking at the lumps of dough on her chopsticks and then looking at the 3 pieces left in the bowl, Old Man Zhou's mood at this moment could only be described with one word: collapse. Old Man Zhou's thoughts had already changed. She thought that if she had known that the Empress's cooking skills were so bad, she definitely wouldn't have entered the palace. However, after old Madame Zhou expended a tremendous amount of effort to resist the nausea she felt several times, and after she finished eating a few large lumps of dough and drank the first mouthful of soup, her thoughts changed again. She thought that if she had known that the Empress's cooking skills were so bad, she definitely wouldn't have given out those 2 red packets and wouldn't have let Xiaohe enter the palace. That big bowl of clear soup was simply salt water. After eating the Empress's lumps of dough, Old Man Zhou no longer had any fighting strength. Not only did her mouth feel uncomfortable, her stomach also felt uncomfortable. She had a feeling that she could vomit at any time. "Io, you finished the entire bowl. Old Man Zhou is already so old, but your appetite is still not bad." Han Yunxi chuckled and was very happy. Old Man Zhou stood up. "Your Majesty, this subject's wife still has." Old Man Zhou wanted to leave. She wanted to go home. She wanted to run out and vomit. However, Han Yunxi's following words made Old Man Zhou swallow down all of her nausea. Han Yunxi said, "This consort's matter isn't over yet. Old Man Zhou, you're the oldest among the madams and have the highest prestige. This consort has a very difficult matter. After hesitating for several days, this consort feels that you're the most suitable person to discuss it with." Old Man Zhou, Bailey Lixiang donated the 2 red packets this consort bestowed to the Bailey clan to Northern Li's Musi. When the steward opened it, it was empty. "Tell me, why are these red packets empty?" This, Old Man Zhou immediately recalled the Empress's question to Zhao Mama. He was the one who helped this consort pack those red packets for New Year's, right? A bowl of noodles was a torture, but after the torture, it was probably a disaster. Old Man Zhou knew very well that if she said even one wrong word, esteemed Empress might push the blame on Xiaohe for the empty red packets, and Xiaohe would confess that she was the one who ordered it. Old Madame Zhou suddenly looked at Xiaohe. Xiaohe met her gaze and immediately looked away. This made Old Man Zhou's heart feel even more hopeless. What should she do? How should she answer? Old Man Zhou thought for a long time. Han Yunxi didn't rush her, but waited patiently. Zhao Mama, on the other hand, couldn't help but speak up. "Old Man Zhou, esteemed Empress is asking you a question. The Crown Prince had been spending the night at the Grand Tutor's estate recently, and Zhao Mama had specially sent someone to inform the Emperor. She guessed that the Emperor would definitely come early. How could she let Old Man Zhou delay such an auspicious time?" Old Man Zhou's mind had actually wandered off, immersed in vexation and regret. She was such a spirited old lady, but she seemed to have aged in an instant. Her eyes were drooping, her eyes dull. She said, "Esteemed Empress, Musi's steward must have made a mistake. Bailey Li Xiang once told everyone that esteemed empress gave her 10 banknotes from Kangon Private Bank. It was a big red packet. How could it be empty? As this subject sees it, we should send someone to the Musée estate to investigate. This consort also thinks that there's been a mistake. With old man Zhou's witness, this consort can rest assured. Alright, this is the only way. Zhao Mama, send someone to investigate later, Han Yunqi said mildly. Old Madame Zhou immediately heaved a sigh of relief. But Han Yunqi continued, this consort heard that Jiangnan's Chen family has a daughter who's hailed as Jiangnan's #1 beauty. She's both talented and beautiful. Have you heard of old man Zhou? In court, everyone was afraid of Long Fei Ye's icy face, so no one dared to speak up about the selection of women. But these madams incited public opinion and created rumors from time to time. They said that some family's daughter was so and so, and that she was going to participate in the palace's selection. Recently, Jiangnan's Chen family's daughter was the most popular topic, so much so that even Gu had run over to ask about it. According to Gu's original words, if Long Fei Yi dares to take concubines, this old man will kill a pair of them on sight. How could old man Zhou's people not understand the empress's meaning? The biggest conflict between them and the empress was the matter of taking concubines. Although old man Zhou's people were unwilling, with Xia He's stain on her reputation, she could only compromise. Reporting to the empress, this subject's wife has seen the Qin family's daughter. She's not as good as the rumors say. It's just a rumor. In this subject's opinion, those people who talk nonsense should be punished. Han Yunqi was very satisfied with this answer. Oh, so it's fake. Then wouldn't the person who married because of the rumors suffer a great loss? It seems that this rumor really needs to be punished. Han Yunqi said seriously. Then, Han Yunqi asked a few more girls, and old man Zhou's people answered carefully. After a while, Han Yunqi lazily stood up, it's getting late. Old man Zhou's people should go back early. Old man Zhou's people quickly stood up. She secretly glanced at Xia He, knowing that Xia He would be imprisoned in the palace forever. The empress let her off the matter of the empty red packets. However, she didn't dare to stir up trouble again, and didn't dare to participate in the affairs of those madams. Han Yunqi's move to deal with old man Zhou's people was called catching the ringleader to catch the bandits. One had to know that old man Zhou's people were the wind vane of Jiangnan's noble madams. If old man Zhou's people didn't dare to mention the matter of the harem, how could the others dare to? Old man Zhou's people knew their place, so how could the others dare to stir up trouble? Afterwards, Han Yunqi sent someone to send a letter to Jin Zi, asking him to fill in the missing money for the red packets. She also bribed the steward to keep it a secret. From then on, no one mentioned the empty red packets again. That night, little Rui'er really stayed at the Grand Tutor's residence. It was rare for Long Fei Yi to come back early, and he pestered Han Yunqi to take a bath together. Han Yunqi told him about old man Zhou's people. He hugged her and listened quietly. In the end, he said, Empress, you've closed the door to my 3,000 harem. You have to pay for the 3,000 affairs alone. Han Yunqi was frightened. She was about to run away when Long Fei Yi immediately came over, domineering. Chapter 1263. Other people said that the night of spring was short and the sun rose high. From then on, the prince would not attend morning court. But when it came to Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi, it became, from then on, the empress would not wake up early. The next day, when Han Yunqi woke up, it was already close to noon. Long Fei Yi had just finished attending court and was handling some matters in the imperial study. At this time, he was sitting alone and drinking tea, waiting for Han Yunqi to wake up. It was rare that he had free time today, so he planned to take Han Yunqi out of the palace for a walk and admire the flowers. Han Yunxi finished tidying up and dressing up. As soon as she went out, she saw Long Fei sitting at the stone table in her courtyard, elegantly and leisurely sipping tea. Today, he was wearing a loose brocade white casual robe with a jade belt around his waist. His ink-black hair was not tied up like usual, but was casually pulled up with a purple jade hairpin. Even though he was dressed simply, he still had a noble air about him. Even the way he raised his cup was so elegant and noble that people couldn't help but want to take a few more looks. Han Yunxi didn't take a few more looks. She just kept looking and looking. Time seemed to have returned to the Duke of Qin's estate many years ago. When he was leisurely in the estate, he was dressed simply and elegantly. There were several times when she went for a walk in the garden and accidentally bumped into him strolling slowly along the veranda. She would always stare foolishly. At this time, she was also foolishly staring at him. Last night in the hibiscus tent, he was gentle and domineering, he was like a wolf and a tiger. It was all still vivid in her mind. Her body was also marked by him. However, looking at the white-clothed and elegant Long Fei in front of her, Han Yunxi really couldn't connect him with the wolf from last night. When Han Yunxi opened the door and came out, Long Fei knew. He leisurely drank the tea in his cup, his gaze still fixed in front of him. However, he said indifferently, "Empress, have you seen enough?" "Not enough." Han Yunxi's courage had already grown. She walked in front of him and sat down. She propped her chin up with both hands and stared at him closely. It was said that admiring handsome men could prolong one's life. The most handsome man in the world was right beside her, so she decided to seriously admire him every day. Looking at Han Yunxi's deliberately infatuated expression, Long Fei couldn't help laughing. His big hand rubbed her bangs and covered her eyes. "All right, let's go eat. Later, I'll go to the Grand Tutor's residence to pick up Rui. Let's go to the outskirts for a stroll." Han Yunxi didn't say anything. She pulled his hand down and continued to stare at it. Long Fei covered it with his other hand and urged, "Hurry up." Han Yunxi pulled his hand down and continued to stare at him. Long Fei was too lazy to pay attention to her. He got up and was about to leave when Han Yunxi chased after him and continued to watch with a smile. "Are you going or not?" Long Fei's face turned cold. Han Yunxi wasn't afraid. She smiled even more brightly. Long Fei really couldn't bear to be cold to Han Yunxi for too long. Han Yunxi hadn't done anything or said anything. She was just smiling, but he couldn't help but laugh. He took her hand and said, "All right, I'll take you out to eat." Han Yunxi waved her hand as they walked and asked, "Long Fei, were you shy just now?" Long Fei didn't answer. Han Yunxi asked again, "Long Fei, I saw that your ears were red just now. Are you cold?" Long Fei still didn't answer. Han Yunxi purposely stopped in her tracks and turned to look at him. "Long Fei, your face is red too." Long Fei finally couldn't take it anymore. He scooped her up and kissed her fiercely on the lips. He kissed Han Yunxi until her lips and face were red as well. He didn't let go of her until he couldn't control himself. He didn't say anything and just stared at Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi's legs were about to turn to jelly. She was embarrassed, annoyed, angry, and amused. She wanted to hit him, but when her fist landed on his chest, she couldn't help but jump into his arms and hug him. "Long Fei, you bully me." "I'll let you bully me back," Long Fei said with a smile. "No need. I'm a magnanimous person. I forgive you." Han Yunxi consciously let go of his arms. They had already left the bedroom. There were many people coming and going on the path. It wouldn't be good if they were seen. Han Yunxi didn't know that at this moment, Xiao Mama, Su Donglin, and the others were all hiding to the side. They were avoiding her and peeking at her. Zhao Mama was very worried. Aya, look at how young and vigorous His Majesty is. Our Empress is blessed. Su Donglin's mouth twitched. He didn't know how to answer. Zhao Mama muttered to herself again, this won't do, this won't do. This old one has to think of a way to help the Empress nourish her health. His Majesty can't always be wronged. Su Donglin was very incredulous. How could this old mama tell that His Majesty was always wronged? His Majesty. His Majesty told you. Su Donglin asked very curiously. Zhao Mama was stunned. She quickly slapped him on the head. As a servant, you have to be observant. You have to observe the smallest detail and know the bigger picture from the smallest detail. This old one takes care of Master's daily needs. If Master frowns, this old one will immediately know what Master is dissatisfied with. Whether His Majesty is wronged or not is a big matter. How can this old one not know? If I wait until His Majesty speaks, then this old one will have to retire and return to my hometown. Su Donglin was stunned and didn't know how to answer. After thinking for a long time, he said, Zhao Mama, those old hens have been brought back by the Tang clan head. What brilliant idea do you have? Zhao Mama smiled mysteriously. Su Donglin thought that she would say some earth-shattering remedy. Who knew that Zhao Mama would say, old duck soup? Su Donglin only felt darkness in front of his eyes. Presumably, the kitchens would soon become a duck farm. Zhao Mama was worried sick about the two masters. At this time, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi were already in the carriage, heading to the Grand Tutor's residence. When Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi arrived, Rui had just woken up from his afternoon nap. He was playing in the garden with Gu and Lil Feng. Gu Beiyue and Mu Ling sat to the side, discussing the reform of medicine. Originally, they had planned to go on a spring walk. As soon as they heard about the reform of medicine, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi both sat down and participated in the discussion. It was said that difficult times called for change. However, Long Fei Yi was more of a proponent of change. Thus, even though Gu Beiyue and Mu Ling had been preparing for the reform of medical and medicine city, Long Fei Yi had temporarily put the matter aside. If they wanted to bring medicine back to the imperial court had to be confident enough to afford medicine. If they didn't have enough capital, maintaining the status quo was the wisest choice. At the very least, with medical and medicine city around, the medical world wouldn't be in chaos. After the Shao family was confiscated, all of their assets were confiscated, alleviating the state treasury's predicament. Moreover, Northern Li's disaster relief funds and resources had become plentiful. As long as the reform of the tax system went smoothly, Great Qin's finances would enter a virtuous cycle very soon. As long as the finances were balanced, everything would gradually improve. Long Fei Yi hoped that after Great Qin's finances and military were stabilized, they would carry out the reform of medicine and medicine city. We only need 5 or 6 years. When the time comes, we can act boldly and decisively. There's no need for a gradual cycle, nor is there a need to be fearful, Long Fei Yi said seriously. Han Yunxi agreed with this view. She had many ideas about the reform of medicine, but before food and shelter were completely taken care of, it was pointless to talk about it. Didn't Ling establish the Medicine Overseer Alliance? In my opinion, Beiyue can establish the Medicine Overseer Alliance. Whether it's the Medicine Overseer or the Medicine Overseer, they'll all be under the court's jurisdiction. That way. Before Han Yunxi could finish, Gu Beiyue nodded. That's an excellent idea. Ling and I both have this authority, and Shao Qi. Everyone looked back and saw Gu Qishao flipping around on the grass with Rui. The two of them were having so much fun that even Lil Thing, who had been hiding far away, joined in. It curled up into a ball and chased after Rue as it rolled back and forth. Gu Bayu's courtyard wasn't very big, but it was full of spring. The grass was full of wildflowers of various colors, and the surrounding trees were blooming as well. Some of the flowers were even sticking out of the walls, letting out the spring scenery. They didn't have to go for a walk in the countryside. Just sitting in Gu Bayu's courtyard and watching Rue sprinkle salt like a wild child was a blissful thing. The joyous and worry-free scene on the grass made Han Yunxi and the rest of the four adults happy as well. They all forgot what they were discussing at the same time. Mu Ling suddenly stood up, as if she wanted to run over and play with them, but she was hesitant. Han Yunxi glanced at her and was hesitating whether to push her, but Mu Ling ran over first and soon joined in with them. After Mu Linger and Gu Qishao's bet that night, no one knew whether Gu Qishao had kept his end of the bargain. However, seeing that Gu didn't hide from Mu Ling, like before, and that Mu Ling could even play with him, everyone felt that there was something going on between the two of them and didn't ask much. The truth would only be known by Gu and Ling. Many times, they persisted and begged to be together, but they couldn't. But if they didn't persist, they could be together every day. What was this called? On sleepless nights, Mu Ling would often think that this was called fate but not fate. So, even if they couldn't be together, it wasn't to the extent that they couldn't see each other. Is Qin Min feeling better now? It's not cold anymore, why don't you bring her back? Han Yunxi asked. She's been living in the south for too long and doesn't want to come back. This subordinate wants to find time to go down south and accompany her to admire the flowers and never come back. Gu Bayu's smile was full of doting. Even someone as astute as Han Yunxi was fooled. As for Long Feiyi, he didn't care so much. His attention was all on Rue. He was thinking that the first batch of spring tea was about to arrive, so Han Chen should be here too, right? Han Yunxi couldn't bear to see Gu Bayu's longing expression. Long Feiyi, give Grand Tutor another holiday and bring Qin Min back. She can accompany me too. Long Feiyi answered casually, I've never restricted him. Gu Baiyu smiled helplessly, rather troubled. Esteemed Empress, Min is pregnant. This subordinate doesn't want her to tire herself out on the journey. At this moment, Mu Ling suddenly interjected from the side, Grand Tutor Gu, esteemed Empress was still running around when she was pregnant with the Crown Prince. Pregnant women and children aren't that delicate. You're a doctor yourself, yet you're afraid. Han Yunxi was amused. Qin Min's a doctor too. North Moon, don't tell me she's annoyed by you because you don't let her do this or that every day, so she's hiding away in Jiangnan to play by herself. Gu Baiyu was speechless. All he could do was shake his head. Gu Baiyu did not go to Jiangnan in the end. Before long, the first batch of spring tea from Jiangnan arrived. It was the extremely precious Biluokun. However, Han Chen still did not come. Half a month later, Long Feiyi received Han Chen's invitation, inviting him to the Heavenly Fragrance tea shop to drink South Mountain Red. Chapter 1264. Han Chen invited Long Feiyi to Heavenly Fragrance Tea House to drink red nanshan. Long Feiyi didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he received the invitation. He asked Han Yunxi, your father doesn't seem to know much about black tea. What do you mean? Han Yunxi didn't understand. She liked tea, but she wasn't as crazy about it as Long Feiyi. Although she had been with Long Feiyi for a long time and knew more about tea, her mouth was getting more and more picky. However, she still couldn't handle being crazy about tea. Before Long Feiyi could explain, Gu, who was sitting at the side, laughed. Poison girl, your father better not ruin my red Nanshan. Han Yunqi was even more confused. It was rare for Long Feiyi to agree with Gu's words. He nodded. It seems like it will be ruined. In fact, Gu was not only a pill fiend, but also a tea fiend. Han Yunqi thought to herself that this guy and Long Feiyi should have gotten along very well. Poison girl, the best spring tea is green tea, and the best black tea is summer tea. Gu began to explain. Tea was divided into spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Among them, spring tea, summer tea, and autumn tea were the most common. Winter tea was also known as winter tea. When the tea tree entered winter, it would be dormant. Only in some places with warm winters would there be tea trees that harvested all 4 seasons and winter tea leaves. After the tea tree passed winter, the first bud that sprouted was spring tea. Spring tea could be said to be the best of the 4 seasons. The tea leaves were plump and soft. Spring tea was divided into pre-Ming tea, pre-Yu tea, and pre-summer tea. They were divided by the 3 solar terms of Qingming, Guyu, and Lixia. The most precious was pre-Ming tea, so there was a saying that pre-Ming tea is as precious as gold. However, not all teas were good before Qingming. For green tea, freshness was important. For example, Biluakun, Longjing, Maofeng, and the like had to be drunk in spring tea, especially pre-Ming tea. However, the best black tea should be the black tea before and after Lixia. This was because black tea didn't care about freshness. It was fully fermented. The weather before Qingming and before rain was cold, and the air was humid. It wasn't conducive to the fermentation of the tea leaves, which would have a certain impact on the taste. Of course, most people wouldn't be able to tell the difference, but Long Feiyi was definitely able to taste it. In the summer, the weather was hot to drinks to eat. But the teas to Lixia. In the summer, the teas to taste, the teas. Lixia's teas to drinks to eat to drinks teas to phase to drinks to tea. To be Ming to eat teas to taste s teas and to taste to tea to be to s teas to know to after Ming s Ming have tes like tSST. The tea that Long Feiyi wanted to invite Han Chen to drink was green tea, the top Ming dynasty's Biluakun and Longjing. He'd planned to invite Han Chen to Yuning to drink some spring tea and visit Rui. Then, he'd go to the Celestial Fragrance Tea House with Han Chen to drink their Maofeng tea. When Lixia came, he'd personally pick some Ming tea leaves, roast them, and seal them. He hadn't expected Han Chen to invite him and Ming at this time. There's only one type of tea in the mysterious continent. Other than the Binghai Ming tea by the Ice Sea, there's no other type of black tea. Han Chen likes Ming tea, but he doesn't know how it came to be. Gu had been running a tea house for many years, so he was very knowledgeable when it came to tea. The weather over at the Ice Sea is different from the Celestial Fragrance Tea House. The north shore of the Ice Sea is dry in spring, so it's time to pick the leaves and roast the tea leaves at the beginning of spring. Here at the Celestial Fragrance Tea House, you'll have to wait until Lixia comes, Gu continued. Long Feiyi kept staring at him, while Gu Qi kept looking at Han Yunqi. However, he immediately turned to Long Feiyi and asked, Long Feiyi, have you seen enough? Am I wrong? Han Yunqi spat out the tea in her mouth. Why did Gu's words sound so familiar? Long Feiyi was expressionless. Gu, are you planning to open a tea house in the mysterious continent? This guy actually knew that there was only one type of black tea in the mysterious continent. He was well aware of this matter. Gu stared blankly at first, then chuckled and denied it. I'm too lazy to go. He'd already made plans. The mysterious continent was now the sovereign's territory. If he opened a tea house there and angered Long Fei one day, wouldn't the Long Fei close down his tea house with an order? If he opened a tea house in the mysterious continent, where one's fist spoke, he wouldn't have to fear anyone as long as he bribed Han Chen with good tea. If Ming 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 was gone, he would cultivate a black tea even better than Ming 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 Ming. When the time came, he'd wait for Long Fei to come begging for it. Of course, he had another reason for opening a tea house in the mysterious continent. It was to make money, a lot of money. Long Fei had no idea what Gu Qishao was thinking. He simply told Han Yunshi, the tea business in Profound Sky Continent should be doing well. Once Cloud Realm Continent has settled down, we'll take over. Once Cloud settles down, we'll take a trip to the Ice Sea and see if there's any trade at the border. Right now, Han Yunshi was thinking about the same thing. It should be more than tea. If we're free, we might as well take a trip to the mysterious continent and see what's going on. Gu's eyes flashed with responsibility. He silently mused that he had to hurry up and make a move before Cloud Realm Continent recovered from its post-war predicament. He had to make a fortune from the mysterious continent as soon as possible. Tea, wine, and cigarettes were all highly profitable businesses. Thinking up to here, Gu suddenly remembered someone, Ning Qing. He didn't know if the mysterious continent's wine business was good or not. Had the long-missing Ning Qing run off to the mysterious continent in search of wine? Anyone who dared to provoke Long Fei was a brother to Gu, so he felt that he should find Ning Qing and go with Ning Qing to the mysterious continent to trade in tea, cigarettes, and wine. With his ability to pick goods and Ning Cheng's business acumen, it'd be hard for them not to be rich. The more he thought, the more Gu Qishao's eyes narrowed. He was suddenly filled with anticipation and yearning for the future. If not for the fact that Rue's situation was still unclear, he would have set off for the mysterious continent today. Long Fei had no idea of Gu's schemes, while Gu had no idea of Han Yunshi's. Currently, Han Yunshi's beautiful eyes were narrowed as well. She realized that the mysterious continent would be a good place for her to make money. Before they started trading at the border, she had to find a way to make a fortune from the mysterious continent. She'd already chosen a partner, and that person was Ning Jing. With her modern business philosophy and Ning Jing's many years of experience, it'd be strange if she didn't become the richest person in the mysterious continent. At this moment, the silent Gu Beiyue suddenly spoke up. Your Majesty, opening up trade at the border will benefit the people on both sides of the border. It's also a good way to open up a new source of revenue for the national coffers. Merchants at the border have always been the most taxed of all. Right now, it's not the right time to do so, but there will definitely be merchants who will do business in private. As this subordinate sees it, we need to set up such tariffs for the tax reform. At Gu Beiyue's words, Han Yunshi and Gu both rolled their eyes at him. The tariff on the Ice Sea was truly a blank, there had never been one before. Excellent. Especially in the next few years, we'll have to increase them. Long Fei said. In the next few years, Cloud Realm Continent wouldn't have much of an abundance of resources. If people still tried to transport goods to the mysterious continent, they'd only increase the price of their goods and increase the price of their goods. Thus, imposing high tariffs would be a good way to keep them in check. Han Yunshi found these words reasonable as well. She began to think that if she went to Cloud Realm Continent to fish for money, then she'd target tobacco, wine, and tea. After all, these weren't basic necessities, so they wouldn't cause the prices of food and daily necessities to rise. A cup of tea had caused a fight for business. Heaven knows if Gu could find Ning Qing and cooperate with him, or if Han Yunshi and Ning Jing could work together smoothly. But these were all matters for the future. No matter what, Long Fei had to make a trip since Han Chen had invited him. After taking care of some urgent matters, he took Han Yunshi and Rue towards the capital. Gu and Gu Beiyue both went with them, while Mu Ling had to return to Medicine City. She delayed setting up the Pharmacists' Alliance for too long, and there was still a bunch of children waiting for her. Mu Ling and Han Yunxi's group left the city gates together. Han Yunxi's group headed east, while Mu Ling headed southwest. Ling, shall we have Su Donglin send you back? Han Yunxi asked. She couldn't bear to see Mu Ling all alone in their group. Unfortunately, no matter how he persuaded Ling, she wouldn't stay. No need. It's only a few days' journey, we'll get there quickly, Mu Ling smiled. Big sis, you're not even old yet, so why are you nagging so much? Be careful that brother-in-law doesn't like you. Long Fei Yi was discussing matters with Gu Beiyue in the carriage, so he didn't hear this. Instead, Gu, who was on horseback, heard it. He just watched without saying anything. Han Yunxi was being nagged, so what else could she do? She simply waved her hand and told Mu Ling to hurry up and leave. Goodbye. Mu Ling smiled and waved. She urged her horse and shouted, brother-in-law, Grand Tutor Gu, goodbye. This was the first time Long Fei Yi heard someone call him brother-in-law. He glanced outside and saw that Mu Ling was already far away. Han Yunxi subconsciously looked at Gu. Ling, that girl, didn't say goodbye to her chi brother. Gu didn't mind. Just as he was about to leave, Mu Ling, shout came from afar. It was especially loud. Goodbye, Big Brother Shao Qi. Big Brother Shao Qi, many years ago, when she was still a girl and he was still a teenager, she used to call him that. Big Brother Shao Qi, here, I stole it from home. It's really delicious. Big Brother Shao Qi, this is all of my private savings. I'll give it all to you. Big Brother Shao Qi, don't go. Can you wait for me for 2 days? I'll ask Mute Granny to give you 1,000 layers of foundation. Goodbye, little girl. Gu said indifferently. He turned his horse around and galloped towards the east. Chapter 1265. The Celestial Fragrance Tea House was located on the outskirts of the imperial capital. Han Yunxi remembered that the first time she came here was to investigate the northernly spies. Later, she was kidnapped here and met Jun Yixia and Gu. The Celestial Fragrance Tea House occupied a large area when it was in Gu's hands. After Long Fei Yi seized it, the originally abandoned back mountain was incorporated into the tea house and the tea mountain expanded by half. If one looked from afar, they would see tea trees stretching out like a crouching dragon in the mountain. However, no matter how much the Celestial Fragrance Tea House expanded, only a small patch of South Peak Red was left on South Peak. This was because South Peak Red had very high requirements for the soil. If it was transplanted to other places, it wouldn't grow well. Although Long Fei Yi gave the Celestial Fragrance Tea House to Han Chen, the guards and tea farmers here were still Long Fei Yi's people. Han Chen wanted the annual South Peak Red. After entering the Celestial Fragrance Tea House, there was still a long way to South Peak. Han Yunxi suggested that everyone get off the carriage and walk. Once they got off the carriage, everyone unconsciously took a deep breath. The mountain was filled with the smell of spring. Even the air was so fresh that it made people reluctant to leave. Gu Beiyue and Long Fei Yi walked side by side. Han Yunxi held Rui Er's hand and walked to the right of Long Fei Yi while Gu walked next to Rui Er. Gu Qishao grinned mischievously and took little Rui Er's hand. Unexpectedly, Rui Er, who was already familiar with him, simply shook him off and ran to his imperial mother's other side to walk beside his imperial father. Not only that, Rui Er even tilted his head and stuck his tongue out at Gu. When imperial mother held his hand, his other hand could only be held by imperial father. No one else could. Although he didn't dare to hold Imperial Father's hand for the time being, he would try his best to be brave. Gu narrowed his eyes threateningly. Rui wasn't afraid of him and mimicked him, narrowing his eyes to threaten him. Just like that, the big one and the small one fought back and forth. In the end, it was Gu who lost. He was happy to lose because he liked to see Rui grin. She was a child after all. She had to smile more and look good. Little guy, your godfather met your parents here by chance. You haven't even shown up yet. Gu laughed. Han Yunshi muttered to herself, at that time, your parents weren't together yet. Gu Beiyue laughed inwardly. Actually, he was here at that time too. It's just that he wasn't discovered. Long Feiyi turned around and asked Han Yunshi, you were robbed on Nanshan Hill, right? Han Yunshi seemed to have thought of something. She pulled Long Feiyi over and whispered in his ear, I was about to leave that day, but I remembered that you liked red Nanshan, so I wanted to pick some myself. Who knew that I almost lost my life for your sake? Long Feiyi really didn't know about this. He thought that Han Yunshi was just playing in the tea garden that day. He looked at Han Yunshi with a doting smile and whispered, it's a little earlier than I thought. What did he mean? Han Yunshi was confused. Long Feiyi straightened up and couldn't help but laugh again. While the two of them were whispering to each other, Gu Qishao had long taken little Rui far away. Out of sight, out of mind. As for Gu Beiyue, he had already silently followed behind Gu and Rui. Early. What early? Han Yunshi asked suspiciously. Long Feiyi didn't intend to answer and was about to walk forward when Han Yunshi hurriedly pulled him back. Say it clearly. Long Feiyi's smile widened. In addition to doting, there was a hint of shyness in his smiling eyes. He leaned down gracefully and whispered in Han Yunshi's ear, so, you liked me so early? It's a little earlier than I thought. Han Yunshi immediately understood and blushed. She glanced at Long Feiyi and didn't know what to say. Long Feiyi smiled silently at her bashful look. Gradually, he chuckled out loud and was in a very good mood. Keep your voice down. Han Yunshi hurriedly looked ahead. Fortunately, Rui and the rest were far away. Otherwise, she would have been embarrassed. Is there anyone earlier? Long Feiyi asked again. What about you? Han Yunshi asked back. Long Feiyi stopped joking with her. He held her hand and asked gently, I don't know when I started to like you. In our next life, we'll fall in love at first sight, okay? She was embarrassed and angry, but when she heard this, her heart softened. She held his hand and gently touched the bite mark on his thumb. That was her masterpiece. He had deliberately left it there. He had said that the birthmark was a bite mark from a lover in the previous life. If the bite mark was still there on the day of death, it would become a birthmark in the next life. Han Yunshi gently kissed the bite mark and smiled. Okay, I'll fall in love with you when I see it in the next life. Would there be a next life for people who transmigrated? What would the next life be like? Han Yunshi didn't know why she suddenly thought of this question. She didn't like this question. At this moment, Rui's wailing came from the front. The couple looked over at the same time. Rui and the rest were long gone. The two immediately chased after them. They chased all the way to the foot of Nanshan Hill and saw Rui crying in Gu Beiyue's arms. Gu was about to turn back to look for them. What's wrong? Long Feiyi asked. I don't know. As soon as we got there, he suddenly started crying. Gu's anxiety was written all over his face. Are you feeling unwell? Han Yunshi asked anxiously. I've checked. His body is normal, Gu Beiyue answered immediately. Han Yunxi had just reached out when Rui pounced over and hid in his mother's arms. No matter how strong or weak the mother was, the mother's arms were always the safest for the child. Rui's crying turned into laughter as soon as he was in his mother's arms. He sobbed softly. Han Yunxi hugged her son tightly, wishing she could trap him in her arms and protect him for the rest of his life. Long Feiyi frowned. His heart ached so much that he couldn't say anything. Although he didn't want to, he still retreated. When his son was most afraid and helpless, he could only retreat. He could see that his son was afraid. Rui, what are you afraid of? Han Yunxi asked softly. Rui looked at his father who had retreated far away. His tears fell again. He was afraid. But he didn't know what he was afraid of. However, he knew that it wasn't his father who scared him this time. Is it father? Han Yunxi asked again. Other than being afraid of Long Feiyi, Rui had never been in such a situation. However, Long Feiyi didn't hug him and kept his distance. Rui looked at his imperial father and cried even harder. Long Fei turned away, refusing to look. It wasn't that he didn't want to look, but that he didn't dare to. He retreated silently, step by step, away from her. But who knew that Rui suddenly struggled? He struggled out of his mother's arms and rushed to his father. He almost hugged his father. His little hand had already reached out, but he stopped in the end. I'm not afraid, he looked up at his father. His baby voice contained a hint of stubbornness. I'm not afraid. He wasn't afraid of his father, but he clearly looked afraid. Everyone was puzzled. They couldn't do anything except feel sorry for him. At this moment, Rui suddenly looked to the right and hid behind Han Yunxi. I'm afraid, could it be someone else? Other than Long Feiyi, who else would Rui be afraid of? Everyone was shocked as they saw a familiar figure walking out of the path filled with flowers and plants. He was tall and proud. His face was cold and his eyes were cold. His white clothes were spotless, but he didn't have the handsomeness of a banished immortal. Instead, he had the dignity of a god. It was as if even the dust of the mortal world didn't dare to approach him. He was Han Yunxi's father, one of the top 5 masters of Xiankong, the head of Wolf's sect, Han Qin. As soon as he came out, Rui desperately held onto his mother's leg. He didn't even dare to cry. Han Yunxi quickly picked up Rui and backed away from Han Chen as fast as she could. Han Chen noticed Rui and followed him. That child is Xianyuan Rui. Rui is afraid of you. Han Chen and Long Feiyi spoke at almost the same time. Gu Beiyue immediately added, No, Your Majesty, His Highness the Crown Prince is more afraid of you. More afraid of me? Han Chen didn't understand. Long Feiyi immediately told Han Chen about Rui's strangeness and explained his business. As Han Chen listened, his originally indifferent expression changed to one of surprise. He actually had some doubts. Is this true? Absolutely true. Long Feiyi said seriously, Senior, we'll know if it's true or not when we go take a look. Han Chen didn't hesitate and chased after them. Long Feiyi and the others immediately followed. Han Yunxi took Rui to the nearest tea room. She finally managed to calm Rui down. However, before Han Chen even entered the tea room, Rui hid in her arms and cried again. What did a child who had just turned 1 know? What could he endure? Han Yunxi was so distressed that she didn't know what to do. She hated that she couldn't bear all of this. Even if it was 10 times or 100 times, she wouldn't hesitate. This was the heart of a parent in the world. Han Chen and Long Feiyi had already heard Rui's cries from outside, but Han Chen still walked in. As soon as he came in, Rue was frightened. His crying stopped abruptly and his small body couldn't stop shaking. How rare, it really is, Han Chen murmured to himself. He waved his hand and a purple light flashed, then quickly disappeared. Neither Gu Beiyue nor Gu Qishao had any idea what was going on. Long Fei had no idea what Han Chen had done, but he could clearly sense that the powerful aura and strength emanating from Han Chen's body vanished as soon as he touched the purple light. Soon, Rue stopped crying and trembling. Han Yunxi was the first to feel the change. She looked nervously at Long Fei Yi, still hugging Rue tightly. Long Fei Yi seemed to understand something. He was also nervous and didn't say anything. The room was silent. Even Han Chen was silent as he looked at Rue. After a while, Rue moved. Like a thief, he secretly lifted his head from his mother's arms and slowly turned to look at Han Chen. His deep and clear eyes were still filled with tears. He was a little confused, a little pitiful, and a little shy. Everyone was so nervous that they didn't dare to breathe too loudly, afraid of disturbing him. However, as he looked at Han Chen, he became bolder and bolder. He slid out of his mother's arms and stood there for a while. He seemed to be hesitant, but in the end, he carefully walked towards Han Chen. This, Rue wasn't afraid anymore. Chapter 1266. The tea room was especially quiet as the adults watched Rue nervously. Rue was cautious at first, but the closer he got to Han Chen, the bolder he became. There was no fear in her red eyes. Instead, they were filled with curiosity. Wasn't this child's mood change a little too fast? Even his mother, Han Yunxi, found it hard to believe. When Rue stood in front of Han Chen, Han Yunxi and the others' hearts hung in suspense. They really couldn't guess what was wrong with Rue and what he wanted to do. Even Han Chen, who was usually cold and indifferent, had a curious expression on his face. He was so tall that he looked like a mountain in front of Rue. He squatted down and looked at Rue seriously. At first glance, he felt that this grandson and son-in-law were very similar. Their facial features weren't the most similar, but their temperament was the most similar. Rue wasn't afraid of Han Chen at all. He didn't even fear Han Chen's gaze as he stared straight into his eyes. On the other hand, Han Chen wasn't used to it and subconsciously retreated. As Han Chen retreated, Rue leaned forward. His black and white eyes were especially serious, as if he wanted to see through Han Chen. Han Yunxi and the others were even more puzzled. They couldn't believe it. What was wrong with Rue? Kid, you're not afraid of me anymore, are you? Han Chen asked coldly. Only then did Rue retreat. He walked around Han Chen from the left, then from the right, as if he was looking for something. After circling Han Chen a few times, he even approached him and sniffed him. Everyone thought of Lil Thing at the same time. Lil Thing had been borrowed by Mu Ling and was going to stay in Medicine City for a few days. If it saw this scene, who knew what it would think? Rue wasn't afraid anymore, but Han Chen was clearly embarrassed and troubled. He wasn't used to the child's approach. After a while, he couldn't take it anymore and stood up to back away. Rue turned to his mother and said seriously, I'm not afraid. He's not afraid of you, but you're. Long Fei Yi was still hesitating about what to say when Han Chen continued, he can sense my internal energy. He's afraid of it. Long Fei Yi had more or less the same idea. He's afraid of me because of my lust bite power. But Rue isn't afraid of me. Han Yunxi quickly interrupted. Your phoenix power is far inferior to my lust bite power, Han Chen explained. It's even weaker than my internal energy. Everyone still didn't understand. Han Chen sat down and said calmly, "Every martial arts family on the mysterious continent has something called the Heavenly Rainbow Stone. When people with different types of inner strength get close to the Rainbow Heavenly Stone, different colors will appear on the stone. The different colors represent different grades of inner strength. There's actually such a miraculous item." Han Yunshi was very surprised. Han Chen continued, "7-colored heavenly stones are very common on the mysterious continent. However, those who possessed the 7-colored heavenly eyes were rare geniuses that appeared once in 100 years. Those who possessed the 7-colored heavenly eyes only needed to see with their minds to determine the grades of everyone's inner strength. The 7-colored heavenly eyes were an innate gift that was present in the mother's womb. When the owner was young, the 7-colored heavenly eyes had yet to be fully opened. They could only sense the strength of the inner strength, but not its grade. Senior, you hid your inner strength, so Rui isn't afraid of you?" Long Fei Yi asked seriously. He had once heard from his master that inner strength was condensed from qi. Those who possessed inner strength would emit an invisible force that could be called an aura. Anyone who practiced martial arts could more or less sense the strength of an expert's aura. On the other hand, the weak's aura would be ignored. The mysterious continent's 7-colored heavenly stone and the 7-colored heavenly eyes that Han Chen mentioned probably determined the strength of one's inner strength by sensing one's aura. Long Fei Yi wasn't curious about this. What shocked him was that Han Chen had the ability to hide his aura so that others couldn't sense his strength or even know that he was a martial arts practitioner. What surprised him even more was that Rui had the innate gift of sensing inner strength and aura. Han Chen nodded. "Now that his 7-colored heavenly eyes have yet to be opened, we can hide it from him. When he grows up and opens his 7-colored heavenly eyes, we might not be able to hide it from him anymore. Innate gift is just innate gift. How much he can do in the future depends on himself. He's young and weak, so he's naturally afraid of powerful forces. It's just an instinctive fear." Hearing this, everyone more or less understood what was going on. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunshi looked solemn and didn't say anything. Gu Beiyue and Gu looked at each other in disbelief. As Han Chen spoke, he looked at Han Yunshi. "There's a 7-colored heavenly eyes user in the mysterious continent now. He never went out when he was young because he was afraid. Now that he's 8 or 9 years old, he's quite capable. If you hide your phoenix power, he'll be able to see through you." Han Yunshi couldn't care less about who would see through her. Her face was filled with a mix of surprise, joy, worry, and fear. Her hands were trembling. "My son won't have 3 eyes in the future, will he?" Han Chen was stunned. Long Fei Yi and the others were stunned as well. But soon, Han Chen burst into laughter. Ha ha, 3 eyes. No way. Han Yunshi was about to cry. She didn't care what kind of world the mysterious continent was or how talented Rui was. She just wanted Rui to be fine. As long as he wasn't afraid of his father, she didn't want anything else. It exists if there's a will. You can see it, but you can't see it. Han Chen smiled. The 7-colored heavenly eyes are just wills. Don't worry. After a false alarm, Han Yunshi immediately pulled Rui into her arms and hugged him tightly. That's good. Rui didn't understand what the adults were saying at all. His mind was on Han Chen. Who was this uncle? Why was it so strange? He clearly had something scary on him, but it suddenly disappeared. Did he hide those things? Could Daddy also hide such a terrifying thing? Han Yunshi and Long Fei Yi didn't know how powerful someone with the 7-colored heavenly eyes was on the mysterious continent, or how many people would chase after and support them. Han Yunshi was only worried about the 7-colored heavenly eyes, while Long Fei was only concerned about when he could hug his son. If he's afraid because he's young, when will he know what's good and evil? Gu Beiyue asked the question that Long Fei wanted to ask. When he's 3 years old at the earliest, Han Chen said coolly. That'll take 2 years. Long Fei stood up and asked seriously, Senior, can you teach this junior how to hide his internal energy? Han Chen didn't speak, but suddenly grabbed Long Fei by the shoulder. Long Fei felt a powerful force envelop his shoulders. Reflexively, he wanted to resist, but held back in the end. Resist me. Han Chen's voice was cold. Long Fei didn't hold back. Although he respected Han Chen, he wouldn't allow anyone but Han Yunshi to exert such force on him. His eyes hardened as he unleashed his lustbite energy and knocked Han Chen's hand away. Han Chen was surprised. Long Fei's internal energy was much more profound than the last time they met. Had he underestimated him last time, or had this kid never stopped cultivating? He ruled over Cloud Realm continent and had the highest level of martial arts. If he hadn't stopped cultivating, then he must have great ambitions. Your lustbite energy should be at the middle 6th level. That's enough to make the top 10 in the mysterious continent. Han Chen gave a rare chuckle. It was obvious that he was very satisfied with Long Fei. In order to hide one's internal energy, one had to figure out its level first. Han Chen was testing the depths of Long Fei's internal energy. The internal energy of the mysterious continent's martial artists was divided into 10 levels, each of which was divided into low, middle, and high levels. Of the top 10 experts, the top 5 were all 7th level, while the bottom 5 were 6th level. If Long Fei went to the mysterious continent, he'd probably eliminate more of the top 10 experts. Han Chen couldn't help but feel pity. If Long Fei had been born in the mysterious continent, then the continent's martial arts rankings would have been a miracle. Unfortunately, he was born in Cloud Realm and had to deal with worldly affairs. Thinking up to here, Han Chen glanced at Rui and felt the urge to take in a disciple for his own talents. But he didn't say it out loud. He turned to Long Fei and said, I can start teaching you today. How long you need to learn will depend on your own cultivation. Thank you, Senior. Long Fei was overjoyed. He turned back and gave Rui a gentle smile that made Han Yunshi jealous. Rui didn't know what was wrong with his father, but he really liked his father's smile. He immediately grinned back at his father. Although the father and son couldn't hug each other, this scene was enough to make others envious. Han Chen and Long Fei went to the room next door. After they left, Han Yunshi finally came back to her senses. Happy and expectant, she hugged Rui and kissed his left cheek, right cheek, forehead, and nose. Little Rui giggled and hugged her face, imitating her and kissing her up and down. Gu Beiyue looked at Rui and fell into deep thought. As for what he was thinking, no one knew. Gu's joy was written all over his face. He said proudly, as expected of my godson, amazing. Seeing Rui ignore him, he snatched the boy over. Rui don't help your father with memorials anymore. Come with me to the mysterious continent, okay? No. Rui answered without hesitation. Gu immediately changed his question. Rui don't go with me to the mysterious continent in the future. Stay in Cloud Realm and help me with my worries, okay? No. Rui's answer was still very decisive. Han Yunshi and Gu Beiyue laughed. They all knew Rui's habits. He would answer any question he didn't understand. No. Han Chen spent an hour teaching Long Fei, then left Long Fei to train on his own. Han Yunshi brought Rui to rest. Gu Beiyue was nowhere to be seen, but Gu was guarding the door. When he saw Han Chen come out, he went over with a smile and tried to worm his way into being friends. Lord Guizhong, you're in a good mood today. Gu remembered that Han Chen hadn't smiled the last time he saw him, but today he did. Chapter 1267. Guimin. Han Chen didn't even spare a glance at Gu before turning to leave. Although Han Yunxi had called him father because of Su Xiaoyu, he and Han Yunxi hadn't officially acknowledged each other yet. Their 10-year promise hadn't come to an end yet. He was still used to these children calling him senior. Gu naturally knew that Han Chen wasn't an easy nut to crack. He chuckled as he chased after Han Chen. Guimin, I heard that you invited Long Fei Yi to drink South Peak Red. Unfortunately, now is not the time to drink South Peak Red. Gu's words successfully attracted Han Chen's attention. However, Han Chen merely stopped. He did not pay much attention to him, and continued onward. He had indeed invited Long Fei Yi to drink South Peak Red. He had sent out the invitation before arriving at the Celestial Fragrance Tea Shop. When he arrived at the Celestial Fragrance Tea Shop and saw the weather, he knew that he was wrong. Spring here was different from spring at the IC. There was more rain here and the temperature was low. It wasn't suitable for the fermentation of black tea. Since he had already sent out the invitation, he didn't ask for it back. Gu persevered as he chased after Han Chen. Guimin, the best South Peak Red will be after summer. Do you want to stay there until then? Han Chen still didn't speak, treating Gu Qishao like air. Gu continued, Guimin, there are many grades in South Peak Red. Do you know how the highest grade, South Peak Red, came to be? This is the Celestial Fragrance Tea Shop secret. When Han Chen stopped, Gu was amused. However, Han Chen didn't ask any questions. Instead, he said coldly, this tea shop already belongs to this sovereign. How could this sovereign not know? How could Gu have forgotten about this? Long Fei Yi had sealed off his tea shop and bribed all his tea farmers. It seemed that Han Chen had done the same thing as Long Fei Yi and bribed all the tea farmers to reveal all the secrets of South Peak Red. There was nothing more to say about Red Nanshan, so Gu immediately changed the topic. Lord Guizhong, it's okay if we don't have Red Nanshan to drink. This time, I have specially brought the best Longjing tea from Jiangnan for you to taste. I beg Guizhong to give me some face. Seeing that Han Chen was hesitating, Gu hurriedly said, why don't we give it a try at Mount Dai Pavilion? The spring water at the Dai Mountain Pavilion on the mountainside of Nanshan was the best water in the Celestial Fragrance Tea House. The nature of tea is bound to arise from the water. When 80% of tea meets 10% of water, the tea will also have 10% of water. He tried 10/10 of the tea, but the tea was only 8/10 of the year. The quality of the tea was very important, but the water used to make the tea was even more important. The same type of tea, when brewed in different water, would have a myriad of different tastes. It looks like you're a tea lover as well, Han Chen said coldly. Gu was overjoyed. Han Chen had finally said something reasonable to him. To tell you the truth, Lord Guizhong, the Celestial Fragrance Tea House was originally this one's property. Red Nanshan was a variety that I and a few other tea growers came up with after many years of research. Saying those words had to be Gu Qishao's greatest goal this time. But Han Chen glanced at him with incomparable disdain. You still have to mention such a shameful thing. Gu was instantly stunned, unable to speak for a long time. Without a doubt, Han Chen had already known about this. By the time Gu regained his senses, Han Chen had already walked far away. He was about to give chase when Han Chen's figure flickered a few times and disappeared from sight. Gu had originally hidden quite a number of good tea leaves. He had planned to get close to Han Chen first, then reveal that he had gone to the mysterious continent to trade tea leaves and seek protection from the wolf sect. In the end, after talking for so long, Han Chen still didn't know him well. He didn't even drink his tea. And looked down on him. Gu suddenly realized that in this world, other than Long Fei Yi, there was still another Han Chen who could strike a blow at him. However, Gu didn't know that long before Long Fei Yi began his closed-door cultivation, he had already made an appointment with Han Chen to taste spring tea at Mount Dai Pavilion 3 days later. Otherwise, Han Chen would have still tasted his spring tea. As expected, Long Fei Yi only took 3 days to learn the art of concealing his cultivation. When he left, the aura and murderous aura emanating from his body due to the lustbite energy had all disappeared. As soon as Long Fei Yi stepped out, he saw Han Yunxi and the others standing outside. Han Yunxi had an indescribable feeling when she saw Long Fei Yi after not seeing him for 3 days. She only felt that this man was calmer and more reserved than before. She didn't know if it was because she couldn't feel the murderous aura from him. Rui didn't know what had happened. He was playing at the side and didn't even know that his father had come out of closed-door cultivation. As soon as Long Fei Yi stepped out, he saw Rui. He frowned and couldn't help but laugh. Rui. He shouted. Rui immediately turned around and smiled when he saw his father. Father had finally returned after disappearing for 3 days. He would ask his mother every night before he went to bed, "Father, Father." His mother would always say, "Father will be back soon." Rui was still a distance away and couldn't sense his father's abnormality. Whenever he was hugged, he could feel his father's terrifying strength. He eagerly ran over to Imperial Father. Just like before, he stopped in front of Imperial Father, not daring to hug him. He looked up and revealed a sweet smile. His teeth were still not fully grown, but they were especially beautiful. He said, "Father, come back." Long Fei Yi couldn't wait to pull Rui into his arms, but he restrained himself, afraid that it would scare the little guy. After all, the little guy still didn't know anything. He squatted down and looked at Rui thinking about what to do. Rui kept looking at him, grinning non-stop. It was as if being this close to his father was a very happy thing. Long Fei Yi couldn't help but ruffle Rui's hair. Usually, Rui wouldn't be too afraid when he did this. Occasionally, when Rui played on the ground for too long and refused to get up, he would pick him up. Rui wasn't too afraid of that kind of touch. Long Fei Yi rubbed Rui's head but didn't let go like before. Instead, he gently caressed Rui's little face and held his little hand. Rui's smile gradually froze on his face. He seemed to have discovered something. Just as Long Fei was about to tighten his grip on the boy's hand, he suddenly broke free. Seeing this, Han Yunxi and Gu Beiwei were shocked, thinking that Rui was rejecting it again. Even Long Fei Ye's heart immediately tightened. However, Rui opened his arms and pounced on Long Fei Yi, hugging him tightly. Long Fei Yi was too tall and Rui's arms were too short. Rui opened his arms a few times but couldn't completely hug his father. He immediately let go and ran to the side, hugging his father from the side. This time, he could hug his father tightly. He didn't say anything and his expression was especially quiet. He hugged his father tightly, pressing his face against his father's arm as if feeling something. Rui didn't move and Long Fei Yi didn't dare to move. But soon, Rui let go again. He ran to his father and suddenly tiptoed, hugging his father's neck. In this way, he could hug her tightly and completely. Long Fei Yi finally couldn't hold it in and hugged Rui with his arms, completely enveloping him in an absolute range of protection and absolute security. Even though he had a lot to say to his son, he remained silent. No amount of words could compare to the warmth of a hug to let his son understand. Rue didn't say anything either. The father and son were so similar, silently hugging and warming each other. On the other hand, Han Yunxi's eyes turned red as she watched the two figures hugging each other. She wanted to cry. Because she was fragile, but because she understood. She understood Long Fei Ye's hope for family and Rue's desire for his father's embrace too well. Only with this hug could Rue's childhood be complete. Only with this hug could Long Fei Ye's life be complete, right? And to her, this scene was blissful and complete. Gu Beiyue chuckled softly. Gu also smiled unknowingly. He didn't feel jealous, but instead felt a sense of happiness. It was unbelievable to him. What was he happy about? Rue hugged his father for a long time before looking up at him. As he looked, his little mouth broke into a smile again. He boldly reached out and touched his father's eyes, nose, and mouth. He unconsciously called out sweetly, "Daddy." "Daddy." Long Fei Ye's heart was about to melt. Rue called out and hugged his father's neck again, but this time, he started to cry. "Daddy. Daddy." Her sobs almost broke Long Fei's heart. He didn't know what to do with this child other than hugging him. Rue cried and looked up at him again. Soon, his tears turned into a smile. "Daddy. Daddy." The smile that blossomed from his tears was tender, clean, and pure. It was as though it could wash away all the hardships and dirt in Long Fei Ye's life. Long Fei Ye kissed Rue's forehead gently. He whispered, "Rue, you and your mother must be here to save Daddy." Rue didn't understand. Seeing that his father was kissing him, he immediately kissed his father's forehead, unwilling to be outdone. Long Fei Ye couldn't help but chuckle. That kind of joyful laughter seemed to come from his heart. It was so real and pure. Rue kissed his father's forehead as if it wasn't enough. He kissed his father's cheeks and finally the tip of his nose. He was as intimate with his father as he was with his mother. He kissed his father's forehead, left cheek, and right cheek over and over again. He actually kissed him 10 times, but it still wasn't enough. Long Fei Ye let Rue kiss him at first. Later, whenever Rue kissed him, he would kiss him back. The father and son squatted on the ground and played. Long Fei Ye didn't forget to wipe Rue's tears as he played with him. His gentle smile stunned everyone. Not just Gu, but even Han Yunxi and Gu Beiyue were stunned. Long Fei Ye actually played a kissing game with someone. If outsiders knew about this, wouldn't they talk about it for 3 months? Just like that, Long Fei Ye concealed his internal energy. Rue was no longer afraid of him and was officially attached to him from this day on. In the afternoon, Long Fei Ye invited Han Chen to Mount Tai Pavilion for spring tea. Rue refused to come down from his arms and insisted on being hugged. Han Yunxi was about to persuade him when Long Fei Ye said, "It's fine. We have to make up for what we owe." Chapter 1268. With Rue sticking to him, Long Fei Ye held him with one arm and brewed tea with the other to serve Han Chen. This is the first batch of Biluokan tea from Jiangnan. Only the freshest buds are plucked from each tree. Only a small pot can be produced from a large plantation. Long Fei Ye explained as he brewed tea. As soon as Gu Qishao heard this, he secretly tossed the tea leaves he'd prepared into a nearby abyss. He rubbed his nose and said nothing. Gu Beiyue, who was sitting across from him, saw him throw the tea leaves away. Gu Beiyue didn't expose him and merely smiled. Han Chen immediately praised the tea after tasting it. Long Fei Ye began to talk about the origin of Biluokan tea. As they chatted, he also asked about the types of tea on the mysterious continent. Gu Qishao and Han Yunxi both grew serious as they silently listened and memorized the words. In the end, Han Qin reached out to Rui. Baby, Grandpa will carry you, okay? Grandpa. Han Chen hadn't formally acknowledged Han Yunxi as his daughter, but he'd already acknowledged Rui, as his grandson. He didn't like his own daughter, but his son-in-law and grandson instead. What kind of temper was this? Han Yunxi was speechless. Rui stared blankly at Han Chen and didn't move for a long time. Finally, he looked at his mother questioningly. What, you don't dare to do it because your mother doesn't agree? Chen was cold even to children. Unexpectedly, Rui actually nodded. Embarrassed, Han Chen was about to withdraw his hand when Han Yunxi hurriedly said, Rui, let Grandpa carry you. Quick. Grandpa is amazing, I can teach you martial arts in the future. Rui, was so talented, how could they let it go to waste? If Long Fei Yi wanted to conquer the mysterious continent again, perhaps Rui, would be an excellent vanguard in the future. Even if they didn't go to war with the mysterious continent, they would at least need a powerful force to guard the ice river and guard against the invasion of the major clans on the mysterious continent. Although Long Fei Yi and Han Chen had agreed that the Wolf sect would protect Cloud Realm's northern borders for 20 years, they couldn't rely on the Wolf sect forever. One had to know that reliance was a restriction. Only when one's own strength was strong would one have a permanent guarantee. Han Yunxi's words were meant to sound out Han Chen. Han Chen didn't answer her, but he still carried Rui over. He sat Rui on his lap and said, Call me Grandpa, okay? Rui looked at his mother with a questioning gaze. Long Fei Yi and Gu Beiyue didn't say anything, but they were definitely laughing in their hearts. Rui was indeed Han Yunxi's biological son. He could always cooperate well at crucial moments. Han Yunxi smiled. Rui, Grandpa has agreed to teach you martial arts. You should call him master, right? Only then did Han Chen look at Han Yunxi, a hint of displeasure in his cold gaze. Han Yunxi wasn't afraid of him. She'd long thought of him as a weirdo anyway. She said, the 10-year promise isn't up yet. I haven't returned to the sect yet, so Rui, has no reason to acknowledge you. Either you accept him as your disciple, or we'll talk about it in 10 years. Will you agree if this sovereign brings him to the mysterious continent? Han Chen asked. Before Han Yunxi could answer, Long Fei Yi was the first to panic. He hurriedly carried Rui back. Rui is still young. There's no rush. But Han Chen was the one who panicked. He can start practicing martial arts at 3 years old. Don't waste his talent. You and your wife are both very talented, so he's not bad either. Moreover, all heaven pupils are geniuses. His talent will be revealed after he turns 3. Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi could both see Han Chen's anxiety. Rui's talent was rare and precious to make someone as cold as Han Chen so anxious. If he was properly nurtured, Rui might even surpass his master. Han Yunxi's eyes flashed craftily. Long Fei Yi, she said deliberately, when Rui turns 3, we'll send him to Celestial Mountain. Let him learn the Nirvana strength first. That's a good idea, Long Fei Yi agreed immediately. Han Chen drank a cup of tea but didn't say anything else. But just as he was about to leave, he said, when the child turns 3, come find me at the Poison Sect's underground palace next winter. There's no need for him to take me as his master. It's up to him, whether he wants to acknowledge me or not. Han Chen agreed in the end. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi stood up and were about to thank him, but Han Chen's figure had already faded away. Senior, are you here to pick Red South Peak in summer? Long Fei Yi called out. Han Chen didn't answer, but replied, I'm here as scheduled. Han Yunxi was overjoyed. She picked up Rue and chuckled. Rue, when you see that uncle in the future, remember to call him grandfather, okay? His grandparents were long gone, and so was his grandmother. He only had one grandfather left, so of course he had to acknowledge him. It was Rue's fortune to have an elder like that. However, Rue's grandfather had a strange temper and a cold personality. Han Yunxi had to use extreme methods to fight for some benefits for Rue. Remember, Rue nodded immediately. He would agree to anything his mother said. Good boy. Han Yunxi was about to hug Rue when the boy began to struggle. His little body moved towards Long Fei. Daddy, Daddy, hug, hug. Long Fei Yi laughed heartily and pulled Rue over. Han Yunxi's hands were empty, her expression blank. Looking at the intimate father and son, she suddenly felt like she had fallen out of favor. That night, Han Yunxi completely fell out of favor. If Rue didn't sleep with them, Long Fei Yi liked to hug her from behind and put his long legs on her lap, holding her in his arms. For this, she often said, Long Fei Yi, let's change the bed to a smaller one. It's a waste to have such a wide bed. Long Fei Yi would always reply, it won't be a waste if you roll. Thus, he really made her roll around, making love with him. If Rue slept with them, then the situation would be completely different. Rue liked to sleep on the inside, between her and the wall. As he slept, he would forget to squeeze into her arms. When Rue squeezed her, she could only back away to squeeze Long Fei Yi. Han Yunxi rarely saw Long Fei Yi sleeping alone. She didn't know if his sleeping posture was good, but Han Yunxi was very sure that Rue's sleeping posture was terrible. If he wasn't kicking the blanket away, he was squeezing her hard. Many times when she woke up early, she couldn't find Rue in the entire bed, only to find him curled up in a ball at the end of the bed. When Rue squeezed her hard, she could even push Long Fei Yi to the edge of the bed. Of course, Han Yunxi wouldn't tell anyone whether Long Fei Yi had been pushed out of bed or not. Because of this, Long Fei Yi often said, Empress, let's change to a wider bed. Han Yunxi always replied, Your Majesty, you can sleep under the bed to keep watch. If word of this got out, all the civil and military officials in court would probably drown Han Yunxi with their spittle. But Long Fei would never expose such an ugly family scandal. Tonight, the situation was completely different. Little Rue actually ran to the side of the bed and nestled in Long Fei Yi's arms to sleep. Moreover, he didn't lose sleep because of the change of position and direction. Instead, he quickly fell asleep quietly. Long Fei Yi lay on his side facing Rue. Han Yunxi was left alone on the inner side of the bed, and the space was especially big. She lay on her back with her limbs facing the sky, having a very bad feeling. As expected, Rue was sleeping peacefully at first, but not long after, he began to squeeze into Long Fei Yi's arms. His little butt kept moving back, squeezing Long Fei Yi until he couldn't help but move back. Long Fei Yi obviously wasn't sleeping. He had waited so long for his son to be in his arms, so he probably wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. When Long Fei Yi moved back, Han Yunxi also moved back. Long Fei Yi then realized that Han Yunxi was still awake. He looked back and asked in a low voice, Can't sleep? I'm going to sleep soon. Han Yunxi consciously moved to the innermost part, her back pressed against the back of the bed, leaving a lot of space for the father and son. Long Fei Yi glanced at her and said coldly, Come here. Han Yunxi shook her head. Long Fei Yi looked at her warningly. Do you want me to do it? Han Yunxi could only obediently lean over and hug him from behind. Long Fei Yi was satisfied. Sleep. Sleep. Could she sleep? After a while, Long Fei-yi moved back again, and Han Yunshi could only follow. If she didn't move, Long Fei-yi would press down on her and she wouldn't be able to move. Thus, she moved a little bit at a time. In the end, Han Yunshi was still pressed against the back of the bed. Just as Long Fei-yi was about to move back again, Han Yunshi finally said, "I'll be squeezed to death." "That's enough." Long Fei-yi finally couldn't help but laugh. He whispered, "Shoo, go to the front and sleep." Han Yunshi had no choice but to sleep in front of Rui. She lay on her side facing Rui and realized that Rui had already fallen asleep and was even grinning. How blissful was this? Han Yunshi wasn't used to the empty back. It felt like she had really fallen out of favor. However, her son's peaceful sleeping face was enough to let her sleep peacefully. It was late at night, and Han Yunshi gradually fell asleep. Long Fei-yi still didn't sleep. Knowing that Rui had squeezed him to the point of no return, he carefully got up and slept behind Han Yunshi, gently hugging Han Yunshi. The family of three was still the same as before. Rui slept in the innermost corner, Han Yunshi slept behind Rui and Long Fei-yi protected the mother and daughter from behind. Han Chen didn't stay long at the Celestial Fragrance tea shop, while Long Fei and the rest left the next day. Gu Beiyue went back to Yuning first, while Gu Qishao said he was going to play, but didn't say where. Long Fei-yi brought Rui and Han Yunshi to Huangdu. Along the way, Rui stuck to Long Fei-yi and wouldn't let anyone hug him except for Long Fei-yi. Han Yunshi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She comforted herself that Rui wouldn't let her hug him, so she was at ease. In the capital, Han Yunshi and the rest saw Tang Zijin, who had just returned to work. Tang Li, Ning Jing, and Madame Tang had all returned to the Tang clan. The first batch of weapons had been delivered, and Tang Zijin was in good condition. Long Fei-yi and Han Yunshi looked over the palace blueprints. Han Yunshi didn't make things difficult for them and asked for an additional zither room. Long Fei-yi hadn't even used his monarch's whisper yet. When Cloud Realm settled down in the future, she would play a good song for him. While he was away, Yuning's urgent missives arrived one after another. Long Fei only stayed a day in the capital city before setting off for Yuning. Once back in Yuning, Long Fei-yi promoted a deputy general in the Jiangnan army named Ouyang Kongfeng to the position of Great General. Ouyang Kongfeng was a member of the Ouyang family and Madame Zhou's nephew. Long Fei-yi showed kindness to the Ouyang family, while Han Yunshi demonstrated her power to Old Man Zhou. The Empress showed kindness and power, so the Ouyang family and Zhou family were both respectful and fearful of the imperial family. With the support of the two families in Jiangnan, Long Fei-yi's tax reforms were met with little resistance. That summer, Long Fei-yi ordered the Ministry of Revenue to officially start a tax reform, re-establishing the tax system for salt, tobacco, alcohol, tea, and some mining industries. This way, while these industries were still in the hands of the Jiangnan families, the imperial court could split the profits with them through taxes. On one hand, it reduced the financial resources of the Jiangnan financial group, and on the other, opened up a source of income for the imperial family's private coffers. As long as they kept the rich Jiangnan in check, the national treasury would have more silver, and the reconstruction of other parts of Cloud Realm would be quicker. After the disaster, Northernly became a dark horse and recovered very quickly. Chapter 1269. The snow disaster in Northernly stopped at the end of spring. When summer came, Jinzi ordered the army to help the herdsmen rebuild their homes. He also personally funded the purchase of a large number of livestock cubs from Winter Crow and the southern part of Northernly and distributed them to the victims of the disaster in the north. Unlike the reconstruction of the southern cities, which required a large amount of manpower and resources. The reconstruction of the northerly grasslands after the disaster was relatively simple. As long as the climate warmed up, the grass would naturally grow. The herdsmen would live in the grasslands. As long as they provided the livestock cubs, the order of the grasslands would gradually be established. What they needed manpower to build was just a city. The architecture style was very rough, and only stones were needed to build it. This kind of building was called a stone city, which was a major feature of the northerly grasslands. Therefore, although northerly was a disaster area, it was not surprising that it recovered faster than the other places. Long Fei Yi took this opportunity to greatly reward Jin Zi. At the same time, he also urged the reconstruction of the western and central regions. Han Yunxi had already expected the situation in northernly. What she was most curious about was where Jin Zi got so much money to buy livestock cubs. As far as she knew, Jin Zi not only bought a large number of livestock cubs, but also bought a lot of adult livestock. He sent a pair to every herdsman in the disaster area. Those adult livestock pairs were the most expensive because the herdsmen only needed to raise them for a month or two before the animals began to reproduce and give birth to cubs. Long Fei Yi, Jin Zi donated a large sum of money to Mu Si last time. Where did he get so much money? Han Yunxi asked curiously. Jin Zi's salary was not even enough to support himself. Long Fei Yi had already checked. He used Mu Ling's gold card. Kangon Bank has records. Adding the last donation, he should have spent more than 100 million taels. Han Yunxi remembered this matter. She knew that Mu Ling had returned Jin Zi's money. She did not know that he had returned more than 100 million taels. It seemed that Jin Zi had become a philanthropist several times and still had a lot left. He's really generous, Han Yunxi said with a smile. As long as Jin Zi had a background, the Long Fei Yi wouldn't interfere. The Long Fei Yi was afraid that Jin Zi had colluded with the slave traders of the Winter Crow Kingdom. Therefore, when Long Fei Yi rewarded him with gold, he not only rewarded him with silver, but also increased his salary. The reconstruction of northernly after the disaster went smoothly, and so did the tax reform in Jiangnan. Long Fei Yi was not as busy as before. After court, he would come over to accompany Han Yunxi and Rui, and then go to the imperial study to correct memorials. He left court early today and Rui, was still sleeping on the bed. Ever since Rui, was no longer afraid of him, the family of three would repeat that crowded mode when they slept. Little Rui, always slept outside. However, when he woke up, he would always find himself sleeping in the deepest part of the room. As for what happened in between, only his parents knew. Long Fei Yi kissed Rui's forehead and Han Yunxi's lips. Ever since he could kiss Rui, he stopped kissing Han Yunxi's forehead and only kissed her lips. When Rui woke up, he would leave after a kiss. If Rui wasn't there or asleep, he wouldn't let go of Han Yunxi so easily. Ever since Rui started sticking to him, Rui would stick to him to sleep every night without exception. If it was in the past, he would still go to the Grand Tutor's residence to sleep in Gu Beiyua's bed. He would even be willing to sleep by himself and let Granny Zhao watch over him. However, after returning from the Celestial Fragrance Tea House, this situation had never happened. This meant that Long Fei Yi didn't have the chance to sell his daughter in the bedroom. In these few months, Long Fei Yi realized that not letting him hug Rui wasn't the worst thing about him. Sticking to him every night was the worst thing about Rui. Seeing that Rui was still asleep, Long Fei Yi kissed her and didn't leave. He very domineeringly pried open her lips and teeth. Early in the morning, he gave her an extremely deep and lingering kiss. They kissed until they were about to lose control, but he couldn't bear to let go. Han Yunxi glanced at him. He glanced at Rue and smiled unconsciously. He kissed her again and even took the opportunity to push Han Yunxi down. Han Yunxi grew anxious. What time was it now? Rue could wake up at any moment. Han Yunxi pushed Long Fei Yi with all her might. Long Fei Yi was playful and didn't let go of her. He bullied her while paying attention to Rue Han Yunxi was so annoyed that she wanted to kick him. Suddenly, Rue turned over. Han Yunxi panicked. Who knew that Long Fei Yi was even more anxious than her? Almost at the same time, he let go of Han Yunxi and got up, straightening his clothes. Rue actually only turned over and didn't wake up. Han Yunxi looked at Long Fei Yi's nervous appearance and was stunned at first. Then, she burst into laughter. It turned out that Long Fei Yi was more afraid of Rue suddenly waking up than she was. She had never seen Long Fei Yi so nervous and embarrassed in her life. Han Yunxi couldn't stop laughing. Rue was woken up and sat up from the bed. His young face was full of drowsiness and confusion. He looked at his imperial mother and then at his imperial father. He was very confused. Did something happen? Long Fei Yi's expression at this moment was indescribable. In short, he stared coldly at Han Yunxi. However, Han Yunxi wasn't afraid. The gloomier his eyes were, the more she laughed. She was laughing so hard that her stomach hurt. The confused Rue crawled over and went around Imperial Mother, who was laughing crazily. He reached out to Imperial Father. Imperial Father, carry. Long Fei Yi's expression immediately warmed up. He carried Rue and let him sit on his shoulder. Imperial Father, what is Imperial Mother laughing about? Rue asked curiously. After 1 year old, Rue developed very quickly in all aspects. He grew quickly and his language skills were also very developed. He could speak a few common words in a coherent manner. He could basically understand the meaning of every word that the adult said. It's a joke, Imperial Father. Long Fei Yi was honest. Why? Rue asked curiously. During this period, Rue had become a curious child. Once he caught onto a question, he would ask it endlessly. Because, Imperial Father, it's funny. Long Fei Yi was always able to answer. Why is it funny? Rue asked again. Because your Imperial Mother thinks it's funny, Long Fei Yi replied. Why do you think it's funny? Rue looked serious. Because Imperial Father is going to approve the memorials. Are you going, Rue Long Fei Yi asked in return. Why do you have to approve the memorials? Rue asked again. Yes, Long Fei Yi was already giving random answers. He said, because the ministers are waiting. Why do they have to wait? Rue continued to ask, not knowing that Imperial Father was being perfunctory. Because they like to wait. Long Fei Yi answered as he carried Rue away. Before he left, he didn't forget to glare at Han Yunxi. Han Yunxi had already stopped laughing, but after his glare, she couldn't help but laugh again. After the father and son left, Han Yunxi got up, her face stiff from laughing. She thought for a long time before coming up with a word to describe Long Fei's predicament just then, the fear of being caught in bed with an adulterer. Zhao Mama, who had been waiting outside, saw that the little master had left with the emperor. She immediately prepared breakfast for the little master. With Zhao Mama taking care of Rue's 3 meals, Han Yunxi didn't have to worry at all. While Rue went to the imperial study with Long Fei Yi, Han Yunxi could be free for most of the day. Every time Rue went to the imperial study, he would sit on Long Fei Yi's incomparably spacious ebony table and flip through the memorials, asking Long Fei Yi to teach him how to read. Long Fei Yi was busy and asked the eunuch beside him to teach him, but refused. Long Fei Yi could only find Gu Beiyue every time. Only Gu Beiyue could handle Sometimes would flip through some confidential memorials that only Gu Beiyue could read. If it were the eunuchs, they wouldn't dare to read them. Han Yunxi tidied up, ate some breakfast, and went to the kitchens. She spent 2 whole months under the personal guidance of the head chef and finally learned how to roll noodles. After spending another month, he was finally able to roll out noodles that were chewy. These days, she was studying the soup recipe. If it was just a bowl of egg noodles, she could have made it long ago. However, she wanted to sit on dough bowl. Therefore, the first step in rolling out the noodles was to boil the soup. She was in a very good mood today. The moment she entered the kitchens, she said with a smile, "Good morning, everyone." When the chefs heard her voice, they all knelt down in greeting, their faces more ashen than the next. The head chef sighed in his heart. "Here we go again." Chef A complained in his heart. "Going to the toilet again." Chef B thought to himself. "This time, I must get the toilet." In short, the 10 or so chefs appeared to be respectful on the surface, but they were all groaning in their hearts. They would rather eat noodles personally cooked by the emperor than drink soup personally cooked by the empress. "Rise, all of you. I'm in a good mood today, so I'll treat you all to soup," Han Yunxi said with a smile. "Thank you, Your Majesty, for the reward," everyone said in unison. After rising, they all retreated to the side to lean against the wall. Their expressions were very similar. Mournful. The Empress had already written a recipe yesterday and had all the ingredients prepared, cut, and washed. Everyone's job this morning was to prepare the ingredients and place them on the table. Therefore, everyone knew how the Empress was going to make the soup stock today. Han Yunxi lifted the gauze cover on the table and saw that the ingredients she wanted were all prepared and arranged in an orderly manner. These ingredients were old hen chicken, chicken bones, chicken innards, pigeon, pork bones, pork lean meat, lobster meat, rock sugar, white pepper, longan meat, ginger, and wolfberry. Although there were many ingredients, in summary, there were actually 4. The first was chicken, the second was lobster, the third was pork, and the fourth was condiments. These chefs had all followed Mama Zhao for many years. Of course, they knew how the emperor's old hen and lobster stew tasted. Thus, the empress's recipe made them especially terrified. Han Yunxi quickly boiled the water and put the ingredients into the pot. She knew the taste of old hen and lobster stew better than anyone else. Of course, she had a deep impression of it. However, she was very confident in her recipe today. The old hen and lobster stew that Long Fei Yi had Mama Zhao cook was purely stewing the meat until it was soft. This time, she used the freshness of the lobster to make the soup. Moreover, the other condiments she added could cover up the fishy smell. It wouldn't conflict with the freshness of the chicken and lean meat. Instead, it would bring out the best in each other. She had tried several times in the beginning to adjust the recipe. The most important thing was that as long as the soup was successfully boiled, she could be done once and for all. This soup was a thick soup treasure in the modern era. It was the base of a hot pot and could be used to cook anything delicious. This time, could Han Yunxi succeed? Chapter 1270. Han Yunxi succeeded. She simmered for an entire day and turned the large pot of clear water into a small pot of light yellow soup. It was especially fragrant and delicious. Those chefs were all foodies. They knew how delicious this soup was just by smelling it. They were both surprised and pleasantly surprised. They couldn't wait to taste that soup immediately so that they could study it themselves. After being chefs for so many years, the soup that they made was not as delicious and rich as the soup that Her Majesty the Empress made. Han Yunshi was also mesmerized by the taste of her own soup stock. Looking at the small pot of soup, she almost drooled. She didn't need to taste it to know that it must taste extremely good. But she still had to taste it personally while it was hot. She carefully scooped up a small bowl and drank the first mouthful. She really couldn't help it. TSK, the taste is extremely good. Seeing this, the chefs who had been standing for an entire day all looked forward to it. Han Yunshi drank a second mouthful, her face full of enjoyment. The aftertaste is endless. The delicacy of the world. The chefs looked at her expression of incomparable enjoyment and couldn't help but swallow their saliva. Han Yunshi finished the rest of the soup in one gulp and even greedily licked her lips. Turning back to look at the chefs, she said seriously, "It's especially delicious. I'm not lying to you." The chefs all knelt down. Congratulations to Her Majesty the Empress. Congratulations to Her Majesty the Empress for finally making a fresh soup. All rise. Han Yunshi said with a smile. The chefs all stood up and waited for Her Majesty the Empress to bestow the soup. But who knew that Her Majesty the Empress would slam the lid on the pot? She sat at the side and seriously recorded the amount of ingredients used today, as well as the heat of the different stages of boiling. So, after successfully simmering, Her Majesty the Empress wouldn't taste the soup with them. At this moment, the chefs who had been hungry for half a day were really about to break down. Their mood was even more gloomy than drinking the soup stock that didn't succeed. After Han Yunshi recorded all the data, she hurriedly took the time to roll a dough. Then, she used the soup stock and some clear water as the soup base. After boiling, she removed the lumps. After a few months of learning, the dough lumps she shaved were very uniform and the size was just right. While the dough balls were cooking, she scooped up some vegetables with water and fried a poached egg at the side. When the dough balls were cooked, she spread the vegetables on top and put the poached egg on top. As a result, this bowl of dough balls looked, smelled, and tasted great. Han Yunshi was the empress of a country, but she smiled happily because she could cook a bowl of dough balls. What kind of happiness was this? This was a woman's exclusive happiness. It had nothing to do with identity, status, or ability. This was the happiness of being able to cook a bowl of noodles for the man she loved. One had to know that no matter how good a cook was, she might not have the opportunity to personally cook a bowl of noodles for her beloved man. Han Yunshi was afraid that the noodles would get cold, so she took the noodles and went out to look for Long Fei-yi. She didn't know how Long Fei-yi convinced Rui-er, but Rui-er actually went to the Grand Tutor's residence with Gu Beiyue and wouldn't be coming back tonight. When Han Yunshi reached the imperial study, she bumped into Long Fei-yi who was about to come out. Long Fei-yi immediately smelled the fresh fragrance. His gaze fell on the soup in Han Yunshi's hands, thinking that it was cooked by the chef and that she had personally brought it over. He didn't know that she had been painstakingly learning how to roll noodles and cook the soup stock in the kitchens for the past few months. Long Fei-yi wasn't hungry, so he glanced at the bowl of noodles and didn't think much of it. Han Yunshi was full of anticipation. She deliberately didn't tell him that she had cooked it herself. She put the noodles on the table and said mildly, "Eat it while it's hot." "Where's Rui-er?" He went to the Grand Tutor's residence. Long Fei-yi's implication was that Rui-er wouldn't be coming back tonight. If Han Yunshi didn't understand, she would have followed him for nothing. Oh. She sat down lazily at the side and picked up the memorial to read. "Have you laughed enough this morning?" Long Fei-yi asked with interest. Han Yunshi knew that he was going to settle the score. She couldn't help but laugh again and asked, "Your Majesty, do you dare to do it again next time?" It seems that the Empress hasn't laughed enough. Long Fei-yi quickly walked in front of Han Yunxi and looked at her coldly. Han Yunxi wasn't afraid of his gaze. She had seen colder and fiercer people before. She always had a way to make him feel warm in an instant. However, when Long Fei-yi raised his hands, Han Yunxi was shocked. Long Fei-yi, you're not allowed to. Before she could finish speaking, Long Fei-yi moved his hands, trapping her in the chair and tickling her. The chair was half-curved, the armrests on both sides were very high, and the backrest was even higher. With Long Fei-yi in front, Han Yunxi had no way to escape. She was ticklish. He knew very well where she was most ticklish, so he specifically scratched there. Han Yunxi laughed, begged, shouted, and resisted. Long Fei-yi, enough, enough. I won't laugh anymore, I won't laugh anymore, ha 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 ha. Long Fei-yi, I'm begging for mercy, I'm begging for mercy, let go. Let go. Long Fei-yi, I was wrong. I was wrong. Ah. Save me. These cries and shouts made the shadow guards at the door all hide far away. Zhao Mama was about to come over when Su Donglin immediately stopped her. Zhao Mama, what's the matter? I'm just here to ask if the Crown Prince has returned. Zhao Mama said seriously. The Crown Prince has returned with the Grand Tutor. The Empress just arrived, so she should be staying in the Imperial study tonight. Su Donglin replied calmly. Zhao Mama was stunned at first, then she said, oh. I understand, I understand. This old servant understands. Thus, Granny Zhao left happily. In the Imperial study, Han Yunxi was already panting as she stood on a chair. She couldn't escape, so she could only stand on the chair so that Long Fei-yi couldn't scratch her armpits. But who knew that Long Fei-yi was too tall, and his hands were long. He just had to stand on his tiptoes and reach out to scratch her. When his demonic claws reached out, she was so frightened that she immediately stepped on the table. The moment she stepped on it, Han Yunxi was stunned. She realized that this wasn't an ordinary table, but the table used by the emperor. All the memorials to the throne were on this table. Han Yunxi was about to jump down, but Long Fei-yi suddenly grabbed her leg, forcing her to sit down. Stop fooling around. Let me down. Han Yunxi said seriously. Long Fei-yi raised his eyebrows and smiled coldly. He pushed Han Yunxi onto the wide table, then leaned down and closed in on her. Just nice, Jin doesn't want to fool around anymore. He said in a low voice as he placed one hand on her waist. Han Yunxi was shocked. Long Fei-yi, are you crazy? Long Fei-yi laughed even more wantonly. Are you scared? Stop fooling around. She was really anxious. He liked to see her anxious and flustered expression. She had laughed at him in the morning, and now, he could laugh back at her. Han Yunxi pushed him. Get up, you're not allowed to fool around like this. You said you're scared, Before he could finish, she said, I'm scared. Long Fei-yi couldn't help but laugh out loud. Even if you say you're scared, I won't let you off. You! Han Yunxi was furious. Long Fei-yi immediately lowered his head and locked her lips. The more she struggled, the more impudent he became. He was simply a demon. The two of them tossed and turned from the ebony table to the warm couch. After a few rounds, Han Yunxi's waist was almost broken. After all, after Rui stuck to Long Fei had kept his heart pure for at least 3 months. Now that Rui wasn't around and he was free, how could he let Han Yunxi off so easily? This scene played out in the solemn and quiet imperial study was extremely ambiguous and indescribable. When Han Yunxi was naked and exhausted on the chaise lounge, Long Fei casually pulled a thin silk blanket from the couch and wrapped her up, then carried her in his arms. "Let's go back to the bedroom, okay?" After the deed, he was always so gentle. Han Yunxi nodded lazily, but she suddenly thought of the bowl of noodles and almost cried. She had painstakingly cooked a bowl of noodles for him, but who knew that he would eat her up? Han Yunxi comforted herself that it was a blissful thing to be able to cook for the person she loved, but it was even more blissful to be eaten by the person she loved. She asked, "Long Fei, are you still hungry?" Long Fei was very surprised that this woman would ask such a question at this time. In the past, when she was so tired that she didn't want to move, he would always whisper in her ear that he wasn't full. Today, this woman was different. Long Fei smiled naughtily and asked in a low voice, "Do you still want to feed me?" Han Yunxi reached out from the silk blanket and pointed at the cold bowl of noodle soup. "I cooked that myself. Do you want to eat?" As soon as she said this, Long Fei's smile froze on his face. "Do you want to eat?" Han Yunxi asked coquettishly. Long Fei coughed subconsciously and didn't answer. Han Yunxi caressed his face, her little hand drifting down to his chest. "I cooked for a whole day. Do you want to eat?" Upon hearing the words, "cooked for a whole day," Long Fei's expression turned even uglier. Han Yunxi's hand teased his chest as she said slowly, "Long Fei, if you don't want to eat, I'll feed you again. Next time, I won't feed you." These words had a double meaning and were clearly a threat. Long Fei couldn't stand Han Yunxi's teasing. He took advantage of the situation and pushed her back to the warm couch, holding down her restless hand. His voice was hoarse. "That's enough." Han Yunxi really did withdraw her hand and shoved him aside. "I cooked it for you personally. Are you going to eat it or not? Give me a straight answer." Although he had smelled the fragrance earlier, he was still terrified that Han Yunxi had cooked it. "Forget it if you don't want to eat." Han Yunxi was angry and wanted to get off the couch barefooted. Long Fei held her back. He didn't say much to her and personally carried the noodles to the outer room. He called Su Donglin to heat it up. Han Yunxi smiled happily. She couldn't help but wrap her arms around Long Fei from behind and lean on his strong back. "Long Fei, I'll cook noodles for you every day in the future, okay?" Long Fei didn't answer. She didn't pursue the matter and continued to laugh foolishly. After a while, Su Donglin brought the heated noodles over. Although the vegetables and poached eggs had been overturned and didn't look good, the broth was still fragrant. Long Fei took a whiff and picked some dough lumps to take a look. Only then did he realize that this bowl of noodles seemed to be pretty good. When Han Yunxi brought the bowl over, he hadn't even spared it a glance. Now he couldn't help but wonder if Su Donglin had switched the bowl for a different one. "Try it. Quick." Han Yunxi was full of anticipation. Chapter 1271. The aroma of the steaming hot dough balls made Long Fei suspect that Su Donglin had changed a bowl of noodles for him. However, Han Yunxi was very close. She looked at the bowl of noodles and urged Long Fei, making him very hesitant. Han Yunxi should be able to recognize the noodles that he had cooked. He, who was usually decisive, was holding a bowl of noodles and hesitating. Han Yunxi kicked him lightly. "Are you going to eat it or not? If you don't eat it, then don't eat it forever." Long Fei had no choice but to drink a mouthful of soup first. Just one mouthful. His conflicted expression immediately changed, and he looked at Han Yunxi in disbelief. Han Yunxi looked at him as well, her face full of anticipation and nervousness. Long Fei didn't say anything. He drank another mouthful and then gently licked his lips, as if he was savoring it carefully. Han Yunxi stared at his lips, looking forward to it. Long Fei Yi looked back as if he wanted to say something. Han Yunxi's heart was hanging in mid-air, but Long Fei Yi didn't say anything. He turned back and continued. This time, he didn't just drink the noodles in small mouthfuls. He started to eat heartily. Han Yunxi was dumbfounded. She had known Long Fei Yi for so long. From the first time she ate with him on the same table until now, she had never seen him eat so much noodles and drink so much soup. Although he wasn't as elegant as before, she liked it. She giggled foolishly. She felt a great sense of accomplishment and happiness. It was a blissful thing to be able to cook a bowl of noodles for the person she loved. It was a blissful thing to be able to be eaten by the person she loved. It was even more blissful to be able to watch the person she loved wolf down the noodles that she had cooked herself. In short, Han Yunxi had taken all the blissful things for herself. When Long Fei Yi finished the bowl of noodles, Han Yunxi chuckled and asked, "Delicious, right?" "Very delicious." After Long Fei Yi answered her, he suddenly walked outside and called for Su Donglin. Han Yunxi was wondering what he wanted to do when she heard him ask Su Donglin, "You changed the noodles, right? Which chef made it?" Jin wants to reward him well. Su Donglin was confused. "Your Majesty, what are you doing?" In the inner room, Han Yunxi's incomparably happy little face instantly darkened. She shouted, "Long Fei, I'll bear a grudge." Seeing Su Donglin's reaction and hearing the shouts behind him, Long Fei finally realized that he'd made a mistake. By the time he returned to the inner rooms, Han Yunxi was already dressed and ready to leave. "You really made it." To be honest, Long Fei Yi still didn't quite believe it. "No." Han Yunxi harumphed coldly, pushed him aside, and walked out of the room. Long Fei Yi pulled her back. "When did you learn?" Han Yunxi punched him in the chest. "I've been learning for more than 3 months, you bastard." "Do you need to learn for so long?" Long Fei Yi blurted out. "You." Han Yunxi was really angry now. Just as she was about to flip out, Long Fei Yi pulled her hand and kissed her lips domineeringly, giving her an extremely deep and lingering kiss. After a long time, he finally let go of her. Lowering his lips to hers, he said gently, "Han Yunxi, how much do you like me that you're willing to learn for so long?" She had clearly been very angry just a moment ago, but now she really wanted to cry. Under his gentle gaze, she said, "I like it very much. I like it very much. It's especially delicious. In the future, I won't eat anyone else's noodles." "I'll eat your noodles," Long Fei Yi said seriously. "Really?" Han Yunxi asked seriously. "Yeah." Long Fei Yi nodded vigorously. Han Yunxi looked at him tenderly. As she looked, she suddenly couldn't help but burst out laughing. She said, "Long Fei Yi, I won't cook anymore. Don't eat noodles for the rest of your life." Long Fei Yi was slightly stunned. Han Yunxi took the opportunity to break free from his hand and ran out. She laughed so hard that she couldn't even straighten her back. He was playing with her. Couldn't she play with his mother too? Long Fei Yi chased after her. Looking at Han Yunxi, who was laughing indecently, he felt helpless and amused. Everyone said that the harem was cold and cheerless. However, how could a harem of 3,000 compare to a family of 3 sleeping on the same bed? How could it compare to her being the cook in the kitchen? How could it compare to her unbridled laughter at this very moment? He was obviously being played and laughed at, but seeing how happy Han Yunxi was, Long Fei Yi couldn't help but laugh as well. When she had laughed enough and calmed down, he beckoned with his finger and said, "Aren't you going to come over?" Han Yunxi shook her head and retreated. Long Fei Yi raised his eyebrows and looked over. A dangerous aura gradually appeared on his face. Han Yunxi turned to run. However, she had forgotten that her qigong was personally taught by Long Feiyi. Long Feiyi quickly blocked her path. He didn't do anything to her. Coldly, he said, "Cook another bowl and I'll let you go." Han Yunxi stood where she was. She shook her head and didn't speak. What else could he do to her? She had already let him eat. She wasn't afraid of eating him again. Sure enough, Long Feiyi's attitude immediately softened. "Cook another bowl." "I haven't had enough yet." Han Yunxi turned her head away and ignored him. "I'll cook another bowl and exchange it with you, okay?" Long Feiyi asked seriously. Han Yunxi couldn't help but laugh out loud. She really had to hand it to Long Feiyi for saying such things. Actually, if he liked it, she would rather cook it every day. "Wait, it'll be delivered soon," Han Yunxi agreed readily. "I'll be your assistant." How could Long Feiyi just wait? Okay. Han Yunxi agreed happily. It was already late at night, but the two walked hand in hand to the kitchen. It wasn't until their figures disappeared that Granny Zhao, Su Donglin, and the rest of the servants appeared from the surroundings. They looked at each other in disbelief. If these two masters went to the kitchens, would the kitchens be able to stand until the next morning? However, the scene in the kitchen was very heartwarming. Han Yunxi showed the finished soup to Long Feiyi. As she explained how the soup was made, she ordered Long Feiyi to wash the vegetables and beat the eggs. The husband and wife chatted as they busied themselves with the chores in their hands. Long Feiyi asked, "How did you make the sour date cake that year?" With this woman's previous culinary skills, it wasn't likely that she could make a shaped cake. Han Yunxi chuckled. She didn't expect Long Feiyi to still remember that sour date cake. She said, "I had the chef make it. I peeled 10 pieces of sour meat and put them in." What else could Long Feiyi do but laugh? Han Yunxi recalled the sour feast he ordered at the inn and couldn't help but laugh. Long Feiyi's movements were too big and he knocked over an egg. Han Yunxi hurriedly helped him clean it up and handed him a new one. The soup was boiling hot and steaming hot. Han Yunxi was about to lift the lid when Long Feiyi quickly pulled her hand away. "Let me do it." The dough was boiling in the pot. The poached eggs and vegetables were ready. The husband and wife stood side by side in front of the stove and waited. If one person went to the imperial court and worked in the kitchen, it wasn't a big deal. However, if two people went to the imperial court and worked in the kitchen together, it was rare. At least, it was unprecedented. Hand in hand, they could rule the world. They could also share a bowl of noodle soup. This was the Ningjing after the vanity of fame. This Ningjing had another name, home. When the noodles were cooked, Long Feiyi only drank the soup. Han Yunxi ate the noodles. Both of them were warm and full. After this night, there was another unwritten rule in the palace. The cooks in the kitchens didn't make noodles or make noodles. Gradually, this rule evolved into a rule of the great Qin imperial family. On the night of the empress election, the empress had to personally make a bowl of noodle soup for the emperor. It was also because of this that later, among the nobles of the great Qin imperial family, making noodles became a necessary skill for women to learn. Of course, this was all in the future. When autumn came, there was supposed to be a grand autumn hunt. However, Long Feiyi went against the norm and wanted to patrol the north incognito. No one understood. It was already autumn. Wouldn't they encounter the cold winter in the north? The officials of the Ministry of Personnel wanted to arrange for the officials of the northern cities to receive them but were stopped by Long Feiyi. Long Feiyi said that he wanted to patrol incognito. Thus, after Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi left the palace, no one knew of their whereabouts except for the Shadow Guard and Long Fei Ye's trusted officials. As for Gu Beiyue, he had taken leave 10 days ago to accompany Qin Min in Jiangnan. Long Fei Yi didn't disturb him, so he didn't know the true whereabouts of Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi. Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi brought Rue and didn't go north. Instead, they went to Jiangnan. Jiangnan in autumn wasn't as bleak as the north. It was cool and the temperature was just right. It could be said that it was the best season of the year for everyone. Long Fei Yi went south for 2 reasons. First, to personally check on the Nazi situation of the big families in Jiangnan. Second, to spend the winter with Han Yunxi in the Sea of Plum Blossoms in Jiangnan. They set off from Yuning and went south. When they came back, they happened to pass by the Sea of Plum Blossoms in Jiangnan. The carriage passed through the wilderness and sped towards the bustling county. It was still Uncle Gao who was driving the carriage. The shadow guards who accompanied them all hid nearby and followed them all the way. Su Donglin had already arranged a place to stay in the county. In order to hide, Long Fei Yi changed the carriage. From the outside, it looked very simple, like a normal merchant's carriage. However, the inside of the carriage wasn't ordinary. In view of Long Fei Yi's casual habits, the carriage didn't need to be luxurious. However, it was comfortable and spacious. For this trip to the south, Long Fei Yi specially drew a map of the route. The few cities they were going to visit and the locations of the salt and mining industries that they were going to secretly investigate were all marked out in detail. At this time, Han Yunxi was looking at the map. She said, "What a coincidence. The Changning salt pans are very close to Ningzhou. Is it just next door?" Long Fei Yi, who was reading the urgent message, looked up. "It's in Ningzhou. What's wrong?" Han Yunxi smiled. "Qin Min and Gu Beiyue are in Ningzhou. What a coincidence. Let Su Donglin check where Gu Beiyue and the others are living in Ningzhou." No, we have to secretly investigate. I want to give them a surprise." Long Fei Yi always followed Han Yunxi in this kind of matter. He didn't express any opinions. 2 days later, Su Donglin found out the news. "Your Majesty, Grand Tutor Gu and the others are living in the south of Ningzhou, in a lane called Qianlu. Madame Qin is nursing her baby and likes quiet. The local officials know that she's there, but they don't dare to disturb her. Let's take a detour. It's okay to delay for a few days," Han Yunxi ordered. Su Donglin didn't even need to ask for instructions from the master. He took the order and left. Chapter 1272. Within a few days, Han Yunxi's family of 3 arrived in Ningzhou. Han Yunxi brought some gifts, wanting to give Qin Min and Gu Beiyue a surprise. Long Fei Yi wasn't as happy as her. He hugged Rue and said coldly, "Rue and I are going to the tea house at the end of the alley. Let Gu Beiyue come over to drink tea when he's free." Han Yunxi couldn't wait for Long Fei Yi to not follow her. As long as Long Fei Yi, this big iceberg, was present, which of her best friends would be at ease? "Rue, you can't drink too much tea, remember? If you're hungry, tell your father," Han Yunxi instructed seriously. It wasn't good for children to drink tea, but little Rue had been with Long Fei Yi for a long time and liked to serve tea at such a young age. If she hadn't stopped him, he would drink tea for all 3 meals a day. Rue sat on Long Fei Yi's neck and nodded seriously. "This son obeys." "Shoo," Han Yunxi quickly shut him up. "If our identities are exposed, you can go back to Yuning by yourself." Rue chuckled. He was clearly teasing his mother. Han Yunxi looked at her son's naughty look and felt helpless. He wasn't even 2 years old and he was already so naughty. What would happen when he grew up? However, Han Yunxi quite liked Rue's cheerful personality. He liked to laugh more and not be as cold as Long Fei Yi. How boring. After the father and son walked away, Han Yunxi walked into the alley. Following the address given by Su Donglin, she found Gu Beiyue and Qin Min's residence. The residence wasn't big, but it immediately attracted Han Yunxi's attention because the outer walls of the residence were covered with creepers. Even though it was early autumn, the walls were still full of lush greenery. The mansion was located in the depths of the alley. In the entire alley, only the outer walls of the mansion were decorated. However, this patch of greenery made the entire alley much quieter. Although the mansion wasn't large, the walls were extremely high, making it impossible for others to pry into everything inside. Han Yunxi went forward and knocked on the door. Soon, someone came to open the door. It was Gu Beiyue's little medicine boy. He immediately recognized Han Yunxi. The little medicine boy was terrified and was about to salute when Han Yunxi hurriedly stopped him and said in a low voice, "Don't make a fuss." The little medicine boy hurriedly invited her in. As soon as Han Yunxi entered the door, she was stunned by the beautiful scenery in the courtyard. She couldn't help but exclaim, "So beautiful." Outside the door was a small garden. The ground was covered with cobblestones of different colors. A large patch of forsythia was planted in the courtyard. Each stalk was about half the height of a person. The branches were spread out like an umbrella, and it would take 2 or 3 people to wrap their arms around it. Every stalk of forsythia was golden yellow and bright and beautiful. Every forsythia was blooming beautifully, and they were huge and delicate. As far as the eye could see, the entire courtyard was surrounded by clusters of golden yellow. Han Yunxi couldn't help but walk into the cluster of flowers. Smelling the unique medicinal fragrance of forsythia, it was as if she was in a sea of flowers. Forsythia was a medicinal herb. It usually bloomed in spring, but there were also some that bloomed in autumn and winter. Ever since Han Yunxi started dealing with medicinal herbs, she had often encountered forsythia flowers. This was because forsythia flowers were commonly used in detoxification, clearing away heat and detoxifying, and reducing swelling and dispersing clumps. However, this was the first time Han Yunxi had seen someone who could plant forsythia flowers into a landscape, and it was so beautiful. Was this planted by Qin Min or Gu Beiyue? Han Yunxi asked with a smile. Back in Medical City, the day before Gu Beiyue married Qin Min, the wedding room hadn't been decorated yet. It was Mu Linger who helped decorate it. Mu Linger asked Gu Beiyue what flower Qin Min liked, and Gu Beiyue said it was forsythia. Han Yunxi also knew that Qin Min liked forsythia flowers at that time. It was planted by Madame. Of course, the little medicine boy knew the secret between his master and Madame, but he didn't hide this question. Isn't Madame taking care of the fetus? She still has the strength to take care of these flowers and plants. Han Yunxi asked suspiciously. Madame instructed the servants to plant them, the little medicine boy quickly explained. Han Yunxi didn't pursue the matter. She asked in a low voice, "Where are the 2 of them? Which room are they in?" The little medicine boy was inwardly anxious. His master had just returned in the morning and couldn't find Madame and Xiaoyao, so he had personally gone out to search for them. Who knew that the Empress, who was supposed to be patrolling the north, would actually appear here? What if the Empress discovered the truth? What should he do then? Master and Madame have both gone out. Her Majesty the Empress, please come in and have a seat. This little one will go and find them now. The little medicine boy had been by Gu Beiyue's side for a long time and was rather quick-witted. Han Yunxi didn't think much of it. After all, she was very assured of Gu Beiyue's safety. Go and find them. I'll walk around the courtyard, Han Yunxi said. She discovered that the courtyard wasn't just filled with forsythia flowers, but also many small green plants. They were all strange, and some of them were actually succulents that weren't easy to raise. Han Yunxi was completely captivated by Qin Min's garden. If she walked around the rooms, she would definitely discover the details of Qin Min and Gu Beiyue's separation. It was a pity that she had been in the garden the entire time. She also discovered many rare medicinal herbs that had all been grown into potted plants. She walked towards the west side of the garden and circled around a stone wall. She actually saw another beautiful scene. It was a withered tree with a very special kind of flower growing on it. It was called the air pineapple. This kind of flower wasn't grown in water or soil. As long as it was placed in the air, it could survive and wouldn't take root. There were many kinds of these flowers. They were all grotesquely shaped and colorful. They were casually placed on the withered branches and gave people the feeling that the entire tree was blooming. It was gorgeous and colorful. Who planted it? Han Yunxi really wanted to bring that gardener back and properly learn about gardening from her. Han Yunxi was admiring the flowers and plants in the garden and had forgotten the time. Only when Su Donglin appeared in front of her did she remember that the little medicine boy had been gone for a long time. Your Majesty, Grand Tutor Gu met His Highness at the tea house. They were chatting in the tea house when His Highness sent this subordinate to ask if you would like to go. Su Donglin said. Qin Min is there too? Han Yunxi asked. Dr. Gu said that Madame Qin went out and hasn't returned yet. She shouldn't be back so soon. Su Donglin answered truthfully. Han Yunxi shrugged. She could only go to the tea house. This tea house was the first one at the entrance of the alley. It was 2 stories high, with one side facing the street and the other facing the alley. Long Fei Yi chose a seat on the second floor near the alley entrance. He sat by the window and could see everyone entering and leaving the alley. When Han Yunxi came over, Rui was eating pastries. Everything about Rui was like Long Fei Yi, except for the fact that he liked to eat sweets. Although Long Fei Yi said that Rui would not like sweets when he grew up, Han Yunxi did not believe him. Gu Beiyue wanted to stand up and bow, but Han Yunxi glared at him. She hugged Rui and sat him on her lap. She smiled and asked, "Where's your wife?" "We came all the way here to visit her. I also just arrived this morning and didn't see her when I came back." The servant said that she took a boat to the river. "I'm sending people to look for her," Gu Beiyue said mildly. He had originally arranged for some guards to secretly protect Qin Min, but who would have thought that those guards would drink too much last night and sleep until the sun was high up in the sky. He had just arrived this morning and did not see Qin Min and her servant Xiaoyao when he entered. He heard from the guards that Qin Min liked to take a boat to the river and often went out. No one in Ningzhou had seen what the Grand Tutor's wife looked like. No one could recognize her and Xiaoyao when they went out. He immediately sent people to look for them when he arrived this morning, but they could not find her even after searching the entire river. He also went to walk around and did not see Qin Min's figure either. He was not restricting her, but he was afraid that something would happen to her. He never expected that the Emperor and Empress, who were supposed to be patrolling the north, would actually appear in Ningzhou and come looking for him. Now, he could only accompany these 2 masters to drink tea here. He had the servants split into 2 groups, one to clean up the house and the other to look for Qin Min. He was afraid that Qin Min would suddenly come back and not wear her fake belly, and the 2 masters would bump into her. He, who was always calm and composed, was really panicking. They chatted as they drank tea. After a while, Gu Beiyue estimated that the medicine boy had almost finished cleaning up the 2 rooms. He whispered, "Master, let's go inside and sit." There are a few things in Medical City that can't be discussed outside. Long Fei Yi saw that Rui was eating with relish and was not in a hurry to leave. He said mildly, "Then we'll talk tonight." Gu Beiyue did not have much to say and could only sit and chat with him. At this time, Qin Min and Xiao Yao were actually sitting at a tea table not far from them. Not only did Qin Min not wear her fake belly, but she also wore a slim-fit dress. She and Xiao Yao had already returned from the boat. She knew that Gu Beiyue would be back in a few days, so she specially went to buy some ingredients and prepared to personally make a few pastries for him to try. Who knew that as soon as she arrived at the port, she would see Han Yunxi and her family of 3 standing at the entrance of the alley. She was shocked and her first reaction was to hide in this tea house. She felt that it was not safe to hide on the first floor, so she deliberately ran to the second floor. But who knew that when she looked down from the second floor, she would see Han Yunxi walking alone into the alley while Long Fei Yi carried Rui into the tea house. At that moment, Qin Min really had the thought of jumping off the building. Although Long Fei Yi had only seen her once or twice, she absolutely did not dare to take any chances and challenge Long Fei Yi's judgment. She could only find a secluded place and sit down. She sat down until now. Gu Beiyue and Han Yunxi arrived. "Madam, let's sneak down from there. They won't see us. They're talking about something." Xiao Yao could not help but whisper. "The Emperor always brings the shadow guard with him when he goes out. If we're seen now, how am I going to explain it to the dean?" Qin Min asked. If not for the shadow guard outside, Qin Min would have already slipped away. In fact, the shadow guard might not be able to recognize her, but Qin Min really did not dare to take the risk. It did not matter if she was exposed, but she could not harm Gu Beiyue. Gu Beiyue had gone through so much trouble to pretend to marry her. What if she was exposed? What would she do? Although she still did not understand why he had to raise a child, since she had chosen to be his wife in name, she should cooperate with him. Qin Min was extremely vexed. She only had one path now, and that was to wait. She could only leave after Han Yunxi and the rest left. Unfortunately, things did not go as she wished. Not long after, a hedonistic young master sat in front of her. "Miss, what's your surname?" The young master smiled lewdly. Chapter 1273. Qin Min's world completely darkened as she looked at the fierce-looking silk pants in front of her. She pulled a long face and puffed up her cheeks, suppressing her depression and anger. She didn't answer the silk pants. The silk pants was very patient, smiling until his small eyes narrowed into a straight line. "Miss, what's your name?" Qin Min finally couldn't hold it in any longer. "Fuck your name." Her voice was low and angry, completely at odds with her beautiful ungenerous face. The silk pants was instantly stunned, his face full of astonishment. He almost came back to his senses. He never thought that such a beautiful woman would actually swear. Beautiful and fierce, soft on the outside but hard on the inside. This kind of woman was simply too challenging. The silk pants immediately sat beside Qin Min, purposely squeezing her in a vulgar manner. Qin Min was so disgusted that goosebumps appeared all over her body. She hurriedly avoided him. However, the silk pants actually got closer and purposely bumped into her. Qin Min couldn't help but stand up. Seeing that the silk pants was about to come over again, Xiao Yao hurriedly blocked him. Miss was as pure as ice and as pure as jade. How could she be bullied like this? Xiao Yao wished she could call the son-in-law over, but she didn't dare and couldn't. Seeing that the son-in-law and the others were still chatting and didn't seem to have heard the commotion here, her heart was filled with hatred. She gave her miss, who didn't know what to do, an idea. She whispered, "Miss, since there's no way out either way, why don't we take a gamble? We'll take this opportunity to run downstairs. This servant will cover you. At this time, the silk pants walked to Qin Min's other side with a lewd smile and asked, "Little lady, don't hide. Do you know who I am?" Qin Min actually already had plans to take a gamble. She didn't want to argue with the silk pants and quietly avoided him. Just as the silk pants was about to approach again, Qin Min exchanged glances with Xiaoyao. The master and servant immediately ran towards the stairs. Who knew that the silk pants actually brought people along? A few servants immediately went up to block the stairs. "Hee, little lady, you're someone this young master has his eyes on. Even if you leave this tea house, you won't be able to escape Ningzhou City." The silk pants laughed endlessly. Qin Min stopped in her tracks and her mind went blank for a moment. She had no time to think about the hedonistic young master behind her. Her thoughts were all on Gu Beiyue and the others, but she didn't dare to look in their direction. She only knew that at this moment, most of the people on the second floor must be looking at them. What to do? Qin Min did not move. She lowered her head and looked at her stomach. She really wanted to cry. How she wished that this was just a dream. When she woke up, she was still in her little room, and Gu Beiyue had not returned. Qin Min. It really is you. Han Yunqi's voice was heard immediately. Qin Min closed her eyes in despair. She really wanted to see Gu Beiyue's expression, but she didn't dare to look. "I don't dare to look." Han Yunqi looked at Qin Min's stomach and then at Gu Beiyue. She was at a loss. What was going on? Gu Beiyue's back was facing Qin Min and the others, so he didn't notice. However, when that hedonistic young master sat over, Han Yunqi noticed. She was chatting with Long Fei Yi and Gu Beiyue while paying attention. She felt that the lady looked like Qin Min, but she wasn't sure. Now that she took a closer look, it really was her. "Qin Min, you. Han Yunqi was very surprised and didn't know how to ask. Qin Min should be about to give birth now. Where's her stomach? Where's the child? Qin Min finally mustered up the courage to look over. She saw that Han Yunqi, Long Fei Yi, and Gu Beiyue were all looking at her. They were all looking at her stomach. Only little Rui was still chewing slowly and tasting the tea and pastries. Qin Min wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Anxiety, guilt, depression, and anger all rushed to her heart. However, when she met Gu Beiyue's cold and angry eyes, her heart suddenly felt stifled. All her emotions were gone, leaving only discomfort, especially discomfort. He was always as gentle as jade, and his eyes were gentle. She had known him for so long, but she had never seen any negative emotions or colors in his eyes. He was angry, very, very angry. What should she do? Qin Min was a little afraid. She was full of guilt and silently lowered her head, not daring to look into his eyes. She also didn't want to explain. A mistake was a mistake, and there was nothing to explain. No one made a sound. Gu Beiyue kept looking at Qin Min and didn't say anything for a long time. Time seemed to have stopped at this moment, but that hedonistic young master was still arrogant. He glanced at Han Yunqi and the others, feeling a little suspicious. This group of people looked rich and noble, but they weren't from Ningzhou City. They must be influential people from other places. Ningzhou City was high and the emperor was far away. He really wasn't afraid of outsiders. He swaggered towards Qin Min and said with a smile, "Little lady, you're called Qin Min. What a nice name." Qin Min lowered her head. While feeling guilty, she was also thinking hard about how to help Gu Beiyue cover up this lie. However, she really couldn't calm down in this situation. Once she didn't calm down, she couldn't think of a good idea. The more she couldn't think of a good idea, the more irritated she became. She almost crushed the handkerchief in her hand. "Little lady, go back and sit. This young master has something to say to you." As the hedonistic young master spoke, he wanted to pull Qin Min's hand. Qin Min was irritated and casually slapped him. "Get lost. Bitch, you even know how to hit people. You're revolting." While the hedonistic young master was shocked, he suddenly grabbed Qin Min's wrist. Han Yunxi was about to use the needle, but who knew that Gu Beiyue had already appeared in front of Qin Min in an instant. He grabbed the hedonistic young master's arm and forced him to let go. This speed was indescribably fast. Not to mention Han Yunxi, even Long Fei Yi didn't see it clearly. He only felt a gust of wind pass by and he was there. God knows how strong Gu Beiyue's grip was. That hedonistic young master immediately let go of Qin Min and slowly knelt down. His mouth was open, but he was in so much pain that he couldn't cry out. "She's not a little lady. She's this one's wife." He was tortured to the point that he couldn't cry out. Even though his eyes were filled with anger, Gu Beiyue's words were still polite and gentle. He said, "Apologize, and I'll spare your arm." "Spare one arm? Then what about the other arm? Save me!" The hedonistic young master finally shouted. The surrounding manservants rushed forward, but they were all shot in the right palm by Gu Beiyue's small golden knife. The blade pierced through the palm, causing the manservants to cry out in pain. They didn't dare to go forward. "Apologize and I'll spare your legs," Gu Beiyue said indifferently. "Spare his legs? Then what about his arms?" The hedonistic young master was so frightened that he struggled. "Who are you? How dare you come to Ningzhou and behave so atrociously? Let me tell you, my father is the magistrate of Ningzhou. Let go of me immediately and I'll pretend that today's incident never happened. Otherwise..." Gu Beiyue's voice was gentle but not lacking in strength. He easily interrupted the hedonistic young master. "Apologize and I'll spare your life." Spare his life? Then what about his arms and legs? At this moment, the hedonistic young master realized that his wrist didn't hurt. However, even though it didn't hurt, he had completely lost all feeling. It was as if his hand was no longer his. God, what happened? The hedonistic young master was finally afraid. I apologize. Let go of me first and I'll apologize immediately." Gu Beiyue let go of his hand, but grabbed his other hand. Gu Beiyue clearly only squeezed lightly, but the hedonistic young master let out a miserable howl. Hearing this sound, everyone present couldn't help but feel their hair stand on end. They all cast fearful gazes at Gu Beiyue. Where did such a weak young master get such great strength from? What kind of person was he? Qin Min was probably the most shocked. This was the first time she saw such a ruthless and cruel Gu Beiyue. She never knew that he, who was as gentle as the spring breeze in April, could be so decisive and cruel when he was ruthless. She realized that she really couldn't understand the man in front of her, even though they were so close. Not only did Gu Beiyue dislocate the hedonistic young master's arms, he also dislocated his legs. He also pinched his ankles. His movements were gentle as if he was a doctor, but it made the hedonistic young master scream incessantly. He was in so much pain that he almost fainted. It was also Han Yunxi's first time seeing such a ruthless side of Gu Beiyue. She realized that she really didn't understand him. She originally wanted to go over and teach that hedonistic scumbag a lesson, but seeing this, she relaxed and sat back down. She laughed softly and said, "Look, our grand tutor Gu is really angry. Only Qin Min can make him this angry." Long Fei Yi drank his tea without saying anything. He was more curious about what was going on with Qin Min's stomach. Gu Beiyue had also just arrived today, so he didn't seem to know about Qin Min's stomach. The hedonistic young master's arms and legs were crippled, so he lay on the ground, unable to move. However, Gu Beiyue was still stubborn. He stepped on the hedonistic young master's back and asked calmly, "Do you want to apologize?" "I was wrong, I was wrong." The hedonistic young master cried in pain. "Madam Qin Min, I was wrong." Only then did Gu Beiyue let go of his foot. A few manservants hurriedly came over to pull him away, only daring to help him up after dragging him far away. The hedonistic young master was extremely unwilling. He was about to be helped down the stairs when he ordered them to stop. He angrily said to Gu Beiyue, "You. Who are you? Do you dare to tell me your name?" Gu Beiyue looked back, his tone so indifferent that it sent chills down one's spine. He said, "If you can't find a doctor to set your bones, you can find me at Medical City. My name is Gu Beiyue." The moment he said this, the hedonistic young master was instantly dumbfounded. Gu Beiyue, the renowned dean of the Medical Academy, the head of the Great Qin Imperial Medical Academy, the Grand Tutor of the Great Qin Empire, and the Emperor's most trusted aide, Gu Beiyue. Not to mention the hedonistic young master, even the manservants supporting him were dumbfounded. Their hands went limp, and the hedonistic young master fell to the ground, falling backward and rolling down the stairs. The manservants all ran down, not just to escape, but to chase after him to save him. This wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that the hedonistic young master's hands and feet would never be healed. Naturally, Gu Beiyue had done something to remove them. Of all the doctors in the world, except for him, no one had the ability to set the hedonistic young master's bones back together. Little Rui had unknowingly looked up to watch the show. When he saw the hedonistic young master rolling down the stairs, he suddenly burst out laughing. Han Yunshi hurriedly covered his mouth and whispered, "Shoo. The Grand Tutor is angry. Don't laugh." Gu Beiyue turned to face Qin Min, his back facing Long Fei Yi and Han Yunshi. His tall body completely blocked Qin Min's body, and Han Yunshi and the rest couldn't see her. Chapter 1274. Qin Min thought Gu Beiyue had lost his mind from anger, but she discovered that when Gu Beiyue's gaze landed on her, he had already recovered his usual calmness and composure. It had to be mentioned that Qin Min was rather stunned. She returned to her senses immediately. He did not blame her like she had imagined, nor did he question her. Gu Beiyue said softly, "Loafers are truly despicable." "First Miss Qin, you weren't frightened, were you?" He was so gentle and so calm, as if he could easily smooth over all the winds and waves, but no one could truly stir up the winds and waves in the lake in his heart. He was a warm person on the outside, but his heart was especially cold. He was so cold that he kept everyone at arm's length. No one could truly enter his heart and see the most genuine him. Qin Min wanted to cry a lot from his concern, but his politeness and calmness made her heart clench up. However, she ignored it very soon, as there was something even more important waiting for her. She gently stroked her extremely flat belly and said softly, "It's exposed. It's fine. Don't say anything. Let me." As Gu Beiyue said that, he wrapped his arm around her shoulder gently. Qin Min gritted her teeth. She was filled with resentment, but she suddenly hugged him and began to sob. "Beiyue, I was wrong. Please forgive me. I really know I was wrong." She did not know when the Emperor and Empress had arrived in Ning Province City, but she was certain that Gu Beiyue had only arrived today. She had vaguely heard their conversation earlier. The Empress seemed to have failed to find her at home, while he was looking for her too. As a result, it was very difficult for him to find a reason to explain the fake pregnancy. The smartest thing he could do was push all the blame onto her and pretend he knew nothing. Otherwise, with how smart the two masters were, they would definitely suspect something. As soon as Qin Min spoke, Gu Beiyue guessed what she wanted to do. He was not particularly surprised by her fake embrace. Actually, he originally had a way to explain it, but she beat him to it. In his impression, first Miss Qin was a reserved, cautious, and well-behaved woman. She did not seem like an impulsive person. She had already yelled it out, so what could he do? He could only cooperate. Otherwise, he really wouldn't be able to hide from the two pairs of eyes behind him. Qin Min hugged Gu Beiyue gently, not daring to hug him too tightly. She turned her head and stole a glance at Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi. Seeing that they were all looking at her, she hardened her heart and hugged Gu Beiyue tightly, throwing herself into his embrace. In that instant, Gu Beiyue's body froze. There had never been a woman who was so close to him, so close to him. It was as if she had filled up his empty arms in an instant. Gu Beiyue had an indescribable feeling. He, who had always been calm and collected, was not only uncomfortable, but also at a loss. It had to be said that Qin Min's heart almost stopped beating after she hugged him tightly. She just wanted to make the show more realistic. She didn't mean anything else. However, when she threw herself into his warm embrace, she realized that he, who was warm and cold on the surface, actually had an incomparably warm embrace. She could truly feel the firmness of his body. He was not as frail as he seemed. She could smell the faint fragrance of herbs on him extremely clearly. It was a particularly pleasant fragrance. People who dealt with medicine all year round would be tainted with the smell of herbs, but his scent was especially clean and pure. It smelled so good that she could immerse herself in it for the rest of her life. There had never been a moment when she felt closer to this man than right now. For a moment, Qin Min even forgot to continue her act. The two of them were stunned. Fortunately, Xiaoyao spoke up in a hurry from the side. Xiaoyao actually began crying. She sobbed, "Son-in-law, Madam didn't do it on purpose. Madam was careless too. Don't be like this. Son-in-law, Madam was afraid you'd be sad, so she kept it from you the entire time. Don't ignore Madam." Only then did Qin Min return to her senses. She sobbed in a hurry, "Beiyue, I've let you down. I've let the child down. You can scold me and hit me, but don't ignore me." She raised her head to look at Gu Beiyue, who was still a little uncomfortable, and shot him a look. "Beiyue, won't you say something? Don't be like this." She made up her mind and decided to go all the way. She extended her hand to touch Gu Beiyue's face without hesitation. However, when she touched his face, her hand still stiffened slightly. His face was icy cold, just like his hand. Back in Yuning, there were times when he would hold her hand, which was why she had only learnt about it. She stroked his face gently and pleaded, "Beiyue, the child's gone. 3 months ago, I accidentally tripped in the courtyard, and the child's gone. Beiyue, I don't know how to tell you. Originally, it was just an act." Perhaps she had become too engrossed in the act, or perhaps it was his furrowed brows right now that made her sad. As she spoke, she suddenly felt extremely pained inside. It was as if all of this was real, as if the child really was gone. However, all of this was real too. "Principal Beiyue, our child can't be born anymore. In the future, what are we supposed to do as a fake couple? Didn't we get married for the sake of that child?" Thinking up to there, Qin Min's eyes actually became wet. She could not help but hug Gu Beiyue even tighter. Her mind was a mess, and her heart was even more in a mess. She had no idea what was wrong with her, but she just could not control her emotions. Perhaps she had become too engrossed in the act, or the act had always been real. Beiyue, the child's gone. Do you still want me? Beiyue, say something. You can scold me and blame me, but don't be so calm, all right? Gu Beiyue's ability to adapt was extremely great. No matter how sudden something happened, he could make the best judgment in the shortest amount of time possible, as well as react in the most correct way. However, this time, Qin Min had been acting alone for a very long time before he finally returned to his senses. Fortunately, all he left to Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi was his back. Who could accept the loss of their child so quickly? Who wouldn't be angry, or sad? Long Fei Yi stared at Gu Beiyue's back and furrowed his brows slightly, but he looked out the window very soon. He said nothing more. Han Yunxi remembered that she had even asked Gu Beiyue a few months ago why Qin Min still had not returned after winter had passed. She remembered Gu Beiyue's answer was that Qin Min liked the climate and scenery of Jiangnan, so she was too lazy to move. She could not run around with a big belly. Qin Min had lost her child 3 months ago. She must have found an excuse to stay behind because she was afraid to tell him about her miscarriage. How did she hide something so major from Gu Beiyue? It was not like Gu Beiyue was such a reasonable person. It was not like he would blame her. However, now that she thought about it, she really had no idea how Gu Beiyue and his wife usually got along. After all, Han Yunxi was already a mother. She could more or less feel the pain and sorrow of being a mother. She was more upset than anything else. She did not have the extra energy to think too much about it, and she could not bear to question Qin Min too much. Finally, Gu Beiyue spoke. His tone was heavy but still gentle. He said, "It was my negligence that I could not be by your side. It's not your fault." As he spoke, he pulled Qin Min to sit aside. Once she left his embrace, she felt as though she had left a warm little world. Gu Beiyue held Qin Min's hand and took her pulse seriously. His expression was heavy and sorrowful. Qin Min secretly heaved a sigh of relief. As long as Gu Beiyue could cooperate with her, this matter could be explained. Their fake marriage wouldn't be exposed. She bit her lip and looked at Gu Beiyue pitifully as she waited. The surroundings quietened down. Everyone was like Qin Min, waiting. After a long time, Gu Beiyue sighed heavily. He did not speak. He held her hand and pressed it against his lips, gazing at her intently. At this moment, Qin Min almost could not keep up her act. Oh my God! The back of her hand was pressed against his lips. She could feel the coldness of his lips, but she could also feel the softness. Was this considered a kiss? Qin Min's heart pounded wildly. She was almost out of breath. However, when she looked up and met Gu Beiyue's gentle eyes, all her restlessness and uneasiness were instantly appeased. This gentleness was different from his usual gentleness. Qin Min could not tell what was different about it. She thought of the moon. She thought of the lone crescent moon high in the sky on an autumn night. It was lonely and aloof, but the moonlight it emitted was extremely gentle. It was like a veil covering the pitch-black night, softening everything. Gu Beiyue, you're so serious when you put on an act. Aren't you afraid that the fake will become real? It's all my fault. Let's go back first, Gu Beiyue said lightly. Qin Min did not say anything else and lowered her head. Gu Beiyue sighed softly. He walked over to Han Yunxi and said helplessly, "It's unfortunate at home. I'll bring my wife back first. You two masters can have a good chat." Unlike Tang Li and Ning Jing, Gu Beiyue did not like to talk about his personal and family matters. Qin Min did not interact much with them either. Long Fei Yi never asked too much. Although Han Yunxi liked Qin Min, she knew Gu Beiyue's character and did not ask too much about his privacy. In this kind of situation, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi naturally did not say much. After all, this matter was too sudden for Gu Beiyue. The husband and wife probably had a lot to talk about. Even if Han Yunxi and Long Fei Yi were curious about something, they had to wait for the other party to calm down first before asking about it. You can go back first. I've already made arrangements for tonight. I'll look for you tomorrow, Long Fei Yi said lightly. Qin Min lowered her head and stood there like a child who had done something wrong. Han Yunxi looked at her and felt that there was an indescribable sense of loneliness around Qin Min. Even she herself could not understand it. After Long Fei Yi said that, Gu Beiyue's anxious heart finally settled down. He quickly left with Qin Min and went home. The alley was close to home. Gu Beiyue walked with Qin Min in his arms. Both of them were silent. Xiaoyao followed behind them. She could not help but stare blankly at the backs of her two masters. If this scene of them supporting each other the entire way was real, how wonderful would that be? During the months when the young miss lived alone in Jiangnan, she planted flowers, studied pastries, practiced acupuncture, and occasionally wrote lyrics and choreographed dances. The young miss lived a lively and fulfilling life on her own. However, as a bystander, she felt her heart ache. The young miss was so young, but why did she live her days like a hermit? She had almost lost her 7 emotions and 6 desires. If the young master was here, the young miss liveliness would have an extra touch of human life, an extra touch of gentleness. They returned to the residence and closed the door. Gu Beiyue immediately let go, while Qin Min let out a huge sigh of relief. She immediately apologized, Dean Beiyue, I'm sorry. It's my fault. Chapter 1275. Qin Min lowered her head and apologized, like a little girl who had committed a grave mistake and was awaiting punishment. Seeing her pitiful appearance, Gu Beiyue wanted to comfort her, but for some reason, he started joking. He asked, "What did you do wrong?" "You shouldn't have run around," Qin Min said, then immediately corrected herself. "You shouldn't have left without the ball." Ball? Gu Beiyue was puzzled. A fake stomach. Xiaoyao hurriedly explained, "Young master, the ball is a fake stomach." Gu Beiyue couldn't help but laugh. He asked again, "Why didn't you bring it?" Before Qin Min could answer, Xiaoyao beat her to it. "It's heavy." "Young master. Why don't you try tying a big ball to you and running around? It's inconvenient to stand or sit. It'll hurt your waist too. You even have to pretend to be pregnant and be careful. Is that uncomfortable?" Qin Min shot a sideways glance at Xiaoyao, warning her to shut up. Xiaoyao pretended not to notice. What could escape Gu Beiyue's eyes? Gu Beiyue saw this and asked again, "Where did you go?" "We came back from the cruise and went to buy some things," Qin Min answered honestly. Xiaoyao was anxious and immediately added, "Young master, madam wanted to make pastries for you, so she went to buy some beans. If she hadn't gone to buy those beans, we would have come back long ago and wouldn't have bumped into His Majesty and Her Majesty." Qin Min secretly glared at her again, but Xiaoyao pretended not to notice. "Did you know they were coming?" Gu Beiyue asked again. "I didn't know," Qin Min answered honestly. "Don't you often go out with the ball?" Gu Beiyue asked, even though he already knew the answer. Actually, he knew all about Qin Min's situation. Qin Min thought for a moment and answered, "I go out 3 or 4 times a month to cruise and buy things." "Then where did you go wrong?" Gu Beiyue circled back to the original question. "Eldest Miss Qin, the ignorant are not at fault. This matter is my negligence." I didn't expect the masters to go south. He had indeed guessed wrong. He had thought that the two masters would go north to see Jean Z and personally reward the soldiers who had contributed to the disaster relief efforts. Who would have thought that they would go south in autumn? Qin Min came to a sudden realization. She raised her head to look at Gu Beiyue, only to see him smiling gently at her. The setting sun shone from behind him. For a moment, Qin Min couldn't tell if he was too gentle or if the autumn sun was too gentle. In short, her heart was warmed. He didn't blame her. He used this method to find an excuse for her. But, Qin Min wanted to ask, what about the child? Before he could ask, Gu Beiyue turned around. It was only then that he noticed the forsythia flowers that filled the garden. They were blooming in large clusters. Autumn in Jiangnan was golden yellow, and yellow flowers could be seen everywhere. However, this was the first time he saw a garden full of forsythia flowers in Jiangnan. He hurriedly walked to the cluster of flowers and took a closer look. He knew that the forsythia was not only a species that bloomed against the season, but it was also the most valuable forsythia in traditional Chinese medicine. It was not easy to raise this thing, let alone raise it so well. Gu Beiyue looked back and asked seriously, Miss Qin, did you plant this? I had nothing to do, so I planted it for fun. Qin Min hesitated before asking, Principal Beiyue, do you like forsythia flowers too? On the day of their wedding, there were quite a few forsythia flowers in their bridal chamber. She would never forget it. She thought about it. In the end, it was impossible for him to know that she liked forsythia flowers. Perhaps it was his own preference. I quite like them. Gu Beiyue replied as he walked deeper into the cluster of flowers. Very soon, he circled around a stone wall and saw another wondrous sight. This was the air pineapple that Han Yunxi had seen before. It was Gu Beiyue's first time seeing this plant, so he found it particularly novel. He picked up one and examined it carefully. It was blooming, but it had not taken root. It had only been placed on a withered tree. What's this? Gu Beiyue asked. This is an air pineapple. It doesn't need to take root. As long as it breathes in air and has the right amount of moisture, it can survive, grow, and bloom. Qin Min looked at the tree full of air pineapples and sighed inside. Ever since her legs were crippled, she was like a rootless child in the Qin family. However, she had grown up. Gu Beiyue held the flower in his hand gently and stared at it for a long time before asking, Miss Qin, can you give me one? He had forgotten when he had become a rootless person, drifting and busy all over the place. If Sir Principal doesn't mind, feel free to choose. Qin Min smiled. She was most willing to share good things. Gu Beiyue did not pick, choosing the one in his hand. The petals and leaves were flourishing, while the flower core was a light yellow. It was just the right size for him to hold it in his hand. Xiaoyao held back again and again before finally speaking up with a chuckle. Son-in-law, you can carry this flower with you at all times. Just sprinkle some water on it from time to time. How about this servant thread it for you and hang it around your waist? Qin Min could not help but burst into laughter when she saw the flower. She was both angry and amused. Stupid girl, you're always coming up with bad ideas. Do you think that's a jade pendant? Gu Beiyue also laughed and asked curiously, it can be threaded and hung. Of course it can. Madam is skillful with her hands and hung one on her medical box. Xiaoyao looked at it seriously and was amused. Hee, what a coincidence. Madam hung one of the same color as son-in-law's. Qin Min was very embarrassed and did not know what to say. She wanted nothing more than to plant Xiaoyao on the ground and turn her into a real Xiaoyao. Xiaoyao's intention of matchmaking was too obvious. Gu Beiyue said indifferently, "It's a rootless plant to begin with, so don't wander around with me. Let it have a place to settle down and raise it in the house." Gu Beiyue entered the room and looked around before placing the flower on the paperweight on his desk. The desk was painted in a dark color, and the flower seemed to have bloomed brightly from the darkness. It stood quietly by itself. So beautiful. So beautiful. Gu Beiyue and Qin Min spoke at the same time. Both of them looked at each other in surprise and couldn't help smiling. At this moment, Gu Beiyue suddenly started coughing. He leaned against the side of the desk and coughed violently. Qin Min was alarmed. Based on her experience, Gu Beiyue's coughing was anything but ordinary. It was not a new illness, but an old one. Many years ago, she had heard rumors that Tianing country's head imperial physician was a medicine jar who treated patients but not themselves. She had thought it was just a rumor, but now it seemed that it was very likely to be true. "Your Excellency Academy head, are you all right?" Xiao Yao was anxious. Qin Min didn't ask any questions. She had Xiao Yao pour some warm water while she listened attentively to Gu Beiyue's coughing. When Gu Beiyue had calmed down, she took Gu Beiyue's hand and took his pulse. Gu Beiyue was very surprised and wanted to refuse, but he saw Qin Min's serious and solemn expression. He had always thought that she was a good-tempered girl, but her current cold and stern demeanor was not to be trifled with. She wouldn't tolerate any disturbances. Once upon a time, he had seen a woman so solemn and serious that he'd become infatuated with her. But today, he didn't become infatuated with her. Instead, he felt an irresistible urge to disturb her and see how she would react. In the end, the impulse was only a passing thought. He sat quietly in his seat. Besides his grandfather, parents, and his close friend from Tianing's palace, Imperial Physician Huang, no one else had taken his pulse. He was very clear on the state of his body. His grandfather and parents had long passed away. Besides himself, there was probably no one else in the world who could take his pulse. For a long time, Qin Min didn't let go of his hand. Her stern expression gradually turned to one of confusion. Very quickly, she furrowed her brows. She asked, "Your Excellency Academy head, this is an old illness that you've had since you were young. It affects your lungs and hurts your liver. Qin Min didn't say anything else, but her words were enough to shock Gu Beiyue. She could tell what was wrong with him. Qin Min seemed to have a lot to say, but in the end, she only asked Gu Beiyue, "Is it not self-governing?" No one could compare to his medical skills, so he should be the clearest about his body's condition. No matter how much she said, it would be useless. She only wanted an answer from him, yes or no. Her brows were furrowed so tightly that he wanted to reach out and soothe her worry and tension. "It can be cured. I've been busy lately and forgot to soak in the medicinal soup," he replied mildly. Qin Min immediately exhaled, her entire body relaxing. Thank goodness, thank goodness. You scared me." As soon as the words left her mouth, she realized that something was wrong. She looked up to see Gu Beiyue staring at her, his eyes filled with astonishment. She felt awkward and didn't know what to say. Her ears turned red. She was quick-witted and found a topic to talk about. "Your Excellency Academy head, with the current situation, what should we do about the child you brought in?" The child she'd brought in was already a year old. He'd been with his wet nurse all this time, so Qin Min hadn't seen him yet. Gu Beiyue fell silent for a while, then sighed helplessly. If he'd known earlier that her legs could be cured, he wouldn't have married her and wasted her entire life. With her medical skills and looks, she wouldn't have to worry about marriage if her legs weren't crippled. "Eldest Miss Qin, this one, still wronged you in the end." Qin Min was stunned by his words. Xiao Yao blurted out, "Son-in-law, you don't want Madam anymore. Gu Beiyue ignored Xiaoyao. He looked at Qin Min and said very seriously, eldest Miss Qin, if you want to leave one day, just divorce me. Jiangnan is a good place. If you want to live here incognito, just let me know. Qin Min didn't move and didn't reply. Gu Beiyue stood up. His Highness and the others won't be coming tonight. If they come tomorrow, you don't have to say anything. I'll deal with them. There's no need to leave the door open tonight. I'll be back tomorrow. Gu Beiyue stood up and left as he spoke. Only when he was far away did Xiaoyao recover her senses and chase after him. Son-in-law. Son-in-law. When she reached the door, he was long gone. Xiaoyao hurriedly turned back. Madam, where is son-in-law going? What son-in-law said just now, he. Xiaoyao was flustered. She thought that son-in-law would stay for a long time this time, but who knew that things would turn out like this? Madam, son-in-law, what does he mean? Xiaoyao didn't understand what son-in-law had said just now. After a long time, Qin Min finally regained her senses. She muttered, Xiaoyao, I think I've fallen for him. What should I do? Xiaoyao was so anxious that she cried. Madam, you've liked son-in-law for a long time. Have I? Qin Min looked up and bit her lip. Gradually, her eyes reddened. Chapter 1276. Late at night. Qin Min sat on a withered tree, staring blankly at the moon in the sky. However, she didn't stay for long. Soon, she jumped down from the tree and returned to her room. Madam, why don't we leave the door open? Xiaoyao hurriedly asked. What if the son-in-law wanted to come back? Once the son-in-law left, even the servants left with him, leaving only the two of them in the residence. He's a man of his word. He won't come back, so there's no need to keep him, Qin Min replied indifferently. Madam, Xiaoyao chased after her, but Qin Min ignored her. Xiaoyao chased after her, but in the end, she couldn't help but ask, Madam, you're upset, right? Very upset, right? Sleep, Qin Min said indifferently. Madam, if you're upset, just tell the servant. If you're upset, don't hold it in, or you'll develop a psychological problem. A psychological problem can't be cured. Just tell this servant whatever's on your mind. Don't hide your sadness. Qin Min walked faster and faster, and Xiaoyao chased after her even faster. She kept chasing after her. Madam, say something. This servant is begging you, just say one sentence. This servant knows all about the bitterness in your heart. You haven't said anything all night, and you've been upset all night. You're not normal. Qin Min stopped abruptly and became angry. You're the one who's not normal. She was fine at first, just a little upset. After hearing Xiaoyao's words, she felt that she should be very upset. But she had thought things through long ago. Gu Beiyue was that kind of person. When he married her, it was because her legs were crippled and she wouldn't be able to find a good marriage and would be casually married off to the Qin family. That was why he looked for her. The marriage was originally consensual, but when her legs recovered, he regretted it. He was a very, very good person. Ever since she recovered, he was afraid that the fake marriage would hurt her. What he had said today was actually the same as what he had said on a normal day. She really wasn't as upset as Xiaoyao said. She hadn't said anything all night because she was pondering something. Pondering something that she still couldn't figure out. Why did Gu Beiyue want to fake a marriage and give birth to a child? He was different from her. She couldn't get married, but if he wanted to marry, how many women in the world would run to Medical City? He could have found someone he liked, gotten married, and had children. Why did he have to use such a method to have a child? They wanted a fake Shadow clan descendant. She pondered that there must be a secret behind this matter, and it must be a big secret. Only after Qin Min had walked far away did Xiaoyao chase after her. Xiaoyao refused to give up and said seriously, "But madam, you obviously like him a lot." "I could tell from the start." Qin Min was slightly taken aback, but she quickly looked at her coldly. "I like him, so does he have to like me too?" "What reason do you have?" Peony had nothing to say, so she could only let the madam leave. That night, Gu Beiyue did not return. However, he didn't go far. He was sitting on the roof of the tea house at the end of the alley. He had never been so upset in his life. Even if he was facing the Empress, he could always think of the best solution in his most rational state. Now that he had a solution, he didn't have to worry anymore. However, when faced with Qin Min, he actually did not know what to do with her. He couldn't think of the best solution. He had never regretted his actions, but when it came to this marriage, he regretted it. A woman in the prime of her life was good in all aspects, even her temperament was excellent. Why did she have to fall into this predicament? Originally, the marriage was already delayed, but today, her brows were tightly furrowed. She looked as if a burden had been lifted off her shoulders. Her words, "Thank goodness, thank goodness. You scared me," made him suddenly realize that he had not only delayed her life, but also her heart. Thinking of this, Gu Beiyue's lips unconsciously curled into a helpless smile. He muttered to himself, "Silly girl." The next morning, Gu Beiyue went back. Qin Min didn't answer him when he said those words yesterday, and he didn't expect Qin Min to answer either. The two of them acted as if nothing had happened and were still polite to each other. After waiting for an entire morning, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi did not appear. It was only when the sky darkened that Gu Beiyue received an eagle letter from Long Fei Yi, saying that something had happened at the Changning salt pans and that he had to rush over to take a look. He would come back next time. After the letter, Han Yunxi personally wrote, "Where there's life, there's hope. Don't tire her out during this period." Gu Beiyue read the letter and was rather surprised. "The Changning salt pans are in the neighboring county, right?" Xiaoyao waited for a long time. Seeing that madam didn't answer, she replied indifferently, "Yes." Her enthusiasm from before was completely gone. Gu Beiyue laughed to himself. "So you've come down south to check on the salt tax?" Qin Min and Xiaoyao didn't quite understand. Qin Min asked, "Are His Majesty and Her Majesty the Empress not coming?" Gu Beiyue originally wanted to pass the letter to Qin Min, but he suddenly thought of the last sentence in the letter and put it back into his sleeve. He said, "Yes, they have urgent matters to attend to and won't be coming. Her Majesty the Empress wants you to have a good rest." Qin Min hurriedly said, "You must thank Her Majesty the Empress for me." Gu Beiyue nodded. He went outside the door and shouted. The bodyguard who had been hiding in the shadows all this time appeared. "Go call Shi Yuba and the others over. Bring the child over too." Qin Min and Xiaoyao looked at each other in shock. There were actually bodyguards hiding near this residence? How long had they been hiding? Qin Min anxiously whispered, "Could they have heard everything we said?" Xiaoyao chuckled. "Madam, don't be afraid. We're not lying. We're just telling the truth." Qin Min narrowed her eyes and looked over. Only then did Xiaoyao realize that she had been overjoyed and immediately shut her mouth. Not long after, Shi Yuba brought the wet nurse and the child over. The child was only a little over a year old and was a boy. They didn't know what his biological parents looked like. He was very good-looking, like a porcelain doll. His features were exquisite and he looked like he was carved from jade. His large, clear eyes were full of ignorance and inexperience. He was brought up by the wet nurse. Shi Yuba saw that he had never seen a stranger before. He was only a little over a year old. Other than walking earlier and more steadily than other children, there was nothing outstanding about him. Compared to other children, he was still young and timid. When it came to drinking sugar, Rue really couldn't be compared to these two children. At first, he was led by the wet nurse. When he entered and saw Gu Beiyue and Qin Min, he became timid. He hugged the wet nurse's thigh and kept hiding behind her. "What's his name?" Qin Min looked at the orphan. Her heart ached for him, but there was also a new emotion in her heart. After all, this child was supposed to be her and Gu Beiyue's biological son. She didn't think too much about it before she saw the child. Now that she saw him, she realized her big mistake yesterday. Not only did she ruin Gu Beiyue's plan, but she also changed the child's fate. He was supposed to be Medical City's young master, the son of the Grand Tutor, and the descendant of the Shadow clan. All those glorious identities were now lost. She also didn't know how Gu Beiyue would deal with him. "He hasn't been named yet," Gu Beiyue said lightly. Before he could finish, the wet nurse hurriedly said, "His nickname is Shadow." Shi Yuba immediately glared at the wet nurse. "Who allowed you to interrupt?" The wet nurse was timid. Shadow hugged the wet nurse tightly, seeming to be even more afraid. Gu Beiyue suddenly frowned. Before he could speak, Qin Min couldn't sit still. "I'm talking to eldest sister." "Who allowed you to interrupt?" "Who are you?" It could be seen that the wet nurse doted on Shadow. Otherwise, she wouldn't have hurriedly added that sentence. Shi Yuba glanced at his master. Seeing that his master didn't say anything, he was resentful and didn't dare to speak again. Qin Min really wanted to hug Shadow, but she was afraid of scaring him. She said to the wet nurse, "Eldest sister, hug him. He looks like he's afraid of strangers. Don't let him scare you." The wet nurse hurriedly picked Shadow up. Shadow immediately wrapped his arms around her neck and refused to let go. Qin Min's heart ached when she saw this. She turned around and said directly to Gu Beiyue, "Sir Director, I want this child. I'll raise him as my own." She knew that Gu Beiyue had adopted a child, but she wasn't sure what was so special about this child that Gu Beiyue had taken a fancy to him. Gu Beiyue teased, "Are you trying to snatch the child from me?" Qin Min didn't understand for a moment, but she quickly understood. It seemed that Gu Beiyue wanted to take this child in as an adopted child. "You can raise this child here. The wet nurse and Dr. Shi will take care of him. If you have the time to educate him, it will be this child's fortune." Gu Beiyue was still very polite. Wasn't his adopted child also her adopted child in name? Why was he being so polite? "He'll call me mother no matter what. There's no difference." Qin Min smiled. "Then eldest Miss Qin should give him a name," Gu Beiyue said. Qin Min disagreed. "Sir Director, the child's proper name should be given by the father." Gu Beiyue smiled helplessly. "Let me think about it carefully before we discuss it." The child's matter was settled just like that. Shi Yuba and the wet nurse also stayed in the residence. Gu Beiyue got someone to tidy up the backyard and renovate a house for Shi Yuba to live in. The wet nurse and Shadow stayed in the same house as Qin Min. Gu Beiyue's house was still empty. He didn't know how Qin Min did it. She became familiar with Shadow in just one day. From the second day onwards, Shadow followed her everywhere. This big and small figure made Gu Beiyue a little absent-minded. He didn't deliberately get close to Shadow, but when Shadow looked at him, he would always smile at Shadow. Gradually, Shadow wasn't afraid of him. It would even take the initiative to get close to him and giggle at him. Qin Min knew that Gu Beiyue wouldn't stay for long, but she didn't expect that Gu Beiwe would stay for much shorter than she expected. After the house in the backyard was repaired, Gu Beiwe was about to leave for Medical City. On the first day of the day, the new moon was not visible. Qin Min didn't let anyone follow her. She followed Gu Beiwe all the way out of the alley. When they reached the entrance of the alley, Gu Beiwe stopped. "Eldest Miss Qin, please wait." Qin Min nodded. "Sir Director, have a safe trip." Gu Beiwe smiled and nodded. He turned around and left without any reluctance. However, Qin Min suddenly shouted, "Gu Beiwe." Gu Beiwe was a little surprised and immediately turned around. This woman had never called him that since they met. What was going on? He looked at Qin Min and had that feeling again. This woman seemed to be different from what he remembered. "Gu Beiwe, if you want a child, why don't you have one yourself? If you ever want a child of your own, let me know." Qin Min stopped. Gu Beiwe unconsciously frowned. A sense of panic surfaced in his heart. Qin Min suddenly smiled and said, "If you let me know, I'll divorce you." You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.